welcome you and to thank you on behalf of the African Secular Economy Network that has put together this program in conjunction with other partners. At the appropriate time, we shall show you the partners so that we can also appreciate their contribution. There are quite a number of distinguished personalities that are here this afternoon, but as it is customary in most programs globally, and that's the global standard, you are first of all taken through what is called the safety talk so that we can know what to do in the event that certain activities occur and what not to do. I'm being told that the safety officer is a little bit away from us, but just in the unlikely event that you need to do anything that has some safety input, if you look to my right, down behind you, for those who are facing me, and for those who are sitting to my left, if you just look at your left-hand side as well, the exit point is the same exit point in the unlikely event that there is an emergency. You know, when you enter a plane, nobody prays that there should be an emergency, but that does not stop the air hostess from telling you what to do. And I've always asked them, in the case of emergency, where will you be? Of course, they have always avoided that question, say, this troublesome boy. The conveniences are also not far from you. Having had that safety talk, I would like to show us some of the invited guests. All of us are important, but I'd just like to mention one or two of them so that we can take cognizance of their presence. For those who are online, we also have quite a number of guests there. I know that we have Nigeria's ambassador to Netherlands, who is going to be on this call. I know that we have Dr. Ayodele Oni and quite a number of people. We have Kum as well. But for now, I'd like to welcome very warmly the representative of the chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. That commission oversees every activity in the Nigerian power sector, and they make sure that the DISCOs, the GENCOs, and all other players in the sector are doing what they ought to do. Engineer Sanusi Garba, who is the chairman of the commission, would have loved to be in attendance, but because there are so many state activities that he has to attend to, he has been gracious enough to ask Engineer A.B. Mohammed to be in attendance for him. Thank you very much for coming, Engineer Mohammed. Engineer Mohammed will be speaking on behalf of the chairman of NEC, who is expected to deliver the keynote address. Once again, you are most welcome, sir. I also like to show to us somebody, if you don't know that person, you don't know the Nigerian power sector. Not just the generating arm of the value chain, but indeed the entire value chain. She's so passionate about it, she's so energetic about it, and she looks forward to the day when Nigeria's generating capacity will come to about 30,000, and transmission will be able to give you about 60,000, and distribution will be able to take about 120,000. I'm speaking of no less a person than Dr. Joy Ogaji, Executive Secretary, Association of Power Generating Companies of Nigeria. You are most welcome. And of course, I have another person here. They provide the policy direction for the sector. If I call them ACEN, certain generation we call them Electricity Corporation of Nigeria, but that's not what they are. Yes, you may be tied to that name, I agree, but that's not what they are. Rather, they are the Energy Commission of Nigeria. Their DG is also supposed to be in attendance, but he has also graciously asked Engineer Bolaji Sulu to be in attendance on his behalf. Engineer Sulu is the Director of Energy Management. You are most welcome, sir. Thank you very much. There's somebody I will show to you, and he calls me an old man. I don't know why he calls me that, because I don't think I'm an old man. I think I'm an ancestor. Of course, it's my boss, it's my friend, a very kind-hearted person, very unusual in his own nature, but of course, all of us are not expected to be the same. Today, he's standing in as the Managing Director, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, but his main portfolio is Chief Marketing Officer. I'm talking of Don. Should I finish the name? Can we give him a round of applause, please? Thank you. I frankly would request that you come forward here, sir. It is my day, so I can issue commands today. When we get back to the office, you can take over. But today, I will command you. So please come forward. Can we give him a round of applause as he comes forward? Thank you very much. His name is Donald Etim. You know, in those days when, for those followers of football, you remember Etim ACEN, that wizard on the field of football in this country. And we miss him greatly for those of us who are familiar with football and that name. Is there anybody I have not shown to you? I will do so as time goes on. Other than that, I will request that we rise and take the second stanza of the national anthem as our opening prayer. Console. Thank you. You may take your seats. Thank you very much. I told you I will still show you some people as we go ahead. Peradventure, you are wondering what we are doing here. Of course, the notices should have showed you that we're talking about secular economy, and this gathering is supposed to engage in some form of dialogue on what the concept is all about. Granted the fact that it's an emerging phenomenon globally, the African continent is also almost being overwhelmed by that concept. To the best of my knowledge, and as we speak today, we have over 30 African countries that are currently taking steps to make sure that they key into the concept of the secular economy. But I'm not in the best position to tell you what it is all about. Rather, when the appropriate time comes, those who are supposed to do so will let you know. But one of the persons that is supposed to do so is just the person that I want to bring forward at this moment to give some kind of insight into that concept in what we will describe as a welcome address and a background to the concept. And that is the chapter lead of the African Secular Economy Network, Kemi Ajakaye. You'd like to step forward, please. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, distinguished policy officers and regulators, dear presenters, speakers, participants, organizers, ladies and gentlemen. With great delight, I'm happy to welcome you to the Secular Economy in the Energy Sector in Nigeria, an event that also doubles as a World Secular Economy Forum 2022 side event from our purpose-built city, Abuja, Nigeria. It also gives me awesome pleasure to welcome our guests participating virtually from across the globe. Good day to you all. This hybrid side event is organized by the Nigerian chapter of the African Secular Economy Network in collaboration with other partners, just as Mr. Fadipe has mentioned earlier. The World Secular Economy Forum is a global initiative of Finland through the Finnish Innovation Fund, CITRA. The first forum in 2017 brought together a global audience to chart a course for sustainable and resource-efficient economy. The forum identified key elements of the circular economy and showcased solutions and learnings from across the world. For the first time ever, the Global South will be in focus as this year's World Circular Economy Forum is to take place in Africa from the 6th to 8th December 2022, titled From Africa to the World. The forum will be held in Kigali, Rwanda, and online, with studios held in cities across Africa. I'm happy to also inform you here today that this is the first of a series of side events of the World Circular Economy Forum to be organized by Nigeria this year. and certainly with more to come in other thematic areas in the Build to the World Circular Economy Forum. The Nigerian chapter of ACEN, the short form of African Circular Economy Network, is a forerunner of circular economy experts, practitioners, enthusiasts, who create synergies between economic and environmental goals and also aim to bring everyone on board towards the transition to waste-free economy. We recognize that the private sector, subnational, nationals, and citizens will not only need circular economy principles, but we need to work closely to achieve them and to bring about the new economic model that we need. The objective of this side event is to explore opportunities in the Nigerian energy sector to meet rising energy demands using a circular, green, and sustainable approach. Our theme for this side event, Vision for a Circular Energy in Nigeria, does show how important circular economy is to all of us, particularly the Nigeria energy sector. That is, energy in various types: electricity, fuels, steam, compressed air, heat, of course, renewable energy, which can be purchased, stored, treated, used in an equipment, processed, or recovered. The optimization of each element of the energy value chain is essential to a successful transition to circular economy, I must say, including decarbonized and efficient energy sector. For elements of the value chain to be strengthened, there must be a coordinated effort and complementary interactions with the challenges of each element identified and its sustainable, environmental friendly solution assured. So this year's Global Collaboration Forum presents a unique opportunity for Nigeria, African nations, and the world at large to transition towards an inclusive low-carbon and climate-resilient economy while tackling key societal challenges. We encourage stakeholders in the energy value chain with a common purpose, system thinking to cherish and live up to, not shifting the burden, fighting old battles, and sitting back, but ready for a circular economy initiative and innovation with ambitious strategy, where partnership for the goal is envisioned for socio-economic advancement of citizens. The Nigerian energy sector has one asset: the workforce, their intelligence, and their potential. Developing it will guarantee our nation's success. Neglecting it, on the other hand, could portray avoidable damages to nation building. It is as simple as that, and the role of circular economy is needed to drive conversations, to change dynamics, to form new thinking and industrial symbiosis as a matter of urgency. Your Excellencies, distinguished panelists and speakers, it is our commitment that this event will not be a mere garden to be counted, but a groundbreaking opportunity for partnership, co-creation, alignment of thoughts, interest, and setting out an actionable, achievable plan for the betterment of Nigeria energy sector. It will spur conversations towards energy policy, targets, energy uses and consumption, energy efficiency, significant energy uses, energy review, and energy performance, amongst others. Ladies and gentlemen, please be informed that circular economy in Nigeria is chiefly promoted by the Kingdom of Netherlands through its embassy and consulate, championing different sectoral projects. Our profound appreciation to Our Excellency, Ambassador Dr. Eniola Ajayi, for our commitment and continued support in strengthening and collaborations between Nigeria and the Netherlands since assuming office. Today, we have amongst us two exceptional circular economy experts, Mr. Chris White and Mr. Koen Reedmakers, who will present financing and circular economy in the energy sector and also give us EU perspective in energy and open in front of us new horizons. Our keynote address by Engineer Sanusi Garba will be delivered on his behalf, will also broaden our minds on new frontiers. In circular economy, there is a place for everyone. Only working together, and all of us will get the results we desire. I express my gratitude to all ACEN partners, and importantly, our sponsors of this event, Ampa Cable Company Limited, the exclusive suppliers for lab electrical and communication cable solution, connectors, and accessories. For the next 3 hours, we would engage, interact, and afterwards network towards mutual commitment to drive the energy sector in Nigeria in a sustainable pathway. Finally, the pre-planning and planning for this event is made possible by the fantastic planning committee who have worked tirelessly. You are all wonderful. I most sincerely thank Mr. Peter Desmond, the co-founder of African Circular Economy Network, for his continuous support and commitment to transition to circular economy in Africa, and for his immense support to the Nigerian chapter of the network. We are glad to have Peter Desmond deliver opening remarks for this event after the video presentation. As I welcome you all to come along as we navigate opportunities along the energy value chain in Nigeria, may I crave your indulgence to watch carefully this short video on the energy sector value chain in Nigeria. Thank you for your kind attention.
Of any nation's economy. The oil and gas sector is a significant contributor to the country's revenue. Similarly, the power industry, which is the backbone of the service and industry sectors. As a signatory to the Paris Agreement, Nigeria is committed to the global goal of net zero carbon emissions and clean sources of energy. The recently submitted NDC reports revealed that fugitive emissions represents 36% of energy sector GHG emissions, which in turn accounts for 60% of the country's total GHG emissions. The energy value chain, in the present form, relies on the extraction of finite natural resources without action to regenerate depleted resources. According to sources such as the Energy Commission of Nigeria, current oil reserves and oil are projected to last for less than 100 years. The power sector also relies on extraction of mineral ores and rare earth metals for infrastructural developments. Reports from the International Resource Panel and the International Renewable Energy Agency reveal that there are strains in the metal supply chain as sources in global reserves dwindle due to their increasing demand. With fast depleting resources and a large population, the Nigeria energy sector must embrace a new energy model that addresses the burgeoning challenges of rising energy demands, climate change, resource scarcity, and biodiversity loss. It is imperative to begin to align with emerging megatrends in how we produce, distribute, and consume energy. Quoting Rika Poka, a sustainability expert, a business philosophy that responds to the challenges in the energy sector is a circular economy. In a circular economy, the value of technical and biological resources are optimally maximized to their highest utility value, and new market entry points are created through material recovery, reuse, repair, refurbishing, eco-designing, and manufacturing. In addition, in a circular economy, coordinated collaborations and industrial symbioses are maximized with other actors within the same or a different value chain. Therefore, as a front-burner issue for national development, it is imperative to convene stakeholders from the energy and circular economy profession at the same table to envision for the nation a just transition that results in resource-efficient production and consumption of clean and affordable energy, energy efficiency in the transmission and distribution networks, carbon reduction towards net zero, and the elimination of waste and pollution. The trite is always relevant. The time to create an environmentally and economically viable energy sector for generations to come is now. Where do you fall in the value chain, and how can you contribute to a circular energy sector in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Kemi Ajakaye. One thing that excites me greatly about this issue of circular economy is the opportunity for the elimination of waste. And if there is one sector of the Nigerian economy that has to deal with that concept like yesterday, it is the focal point of this gathering, which is the energy sector. And by extension, or when you narrow it down, you bring it very close to the power sector. I know very clearly that most discourse, if not all of them, complain about one thing: the way we use electricity in this country. It's a major concern for everyone, but I'm very hopeful that with this kind of concept enveloping the entire country, we'll come to the consciousness of how to make sure that that waste that had been part of our culture is eliminated eventually. On that note, I'd like to bring forward Mr. Peter Desmond, who will be presenting online his opening remarks. Mr. Peter Desmond is a co-founder of the African Circular Economy Network. Can we bring him online, please? Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. As my colleague has just said, my name is Peter Desmond. I am a co-founder of the African Circular Economy Network. Thank you, Kemi, for your kind words and for organising this very important event, which is a significant contribution to the transition to a circular economy in Africa. And on behalf of the African Circular Economy Network, I would like to welcome you all to this event. ACEN was established in July 2016 and now has 200 country representatives and chapter members in 30 countries across Africa, as well as a contact list of over 1,000 people around the world. And in early 2021, we established the ACEN Foundation in collaboration with Trinomics BV in the Netherlands. The vision of ACEN is to build a restorative African economy that generates well-being and prosperity, inclusive of all its people, through new forms of economic production and consumption, which maintain and regenerate its environmental resources. Over the last 6 years, we've been organising knowledge-sharing events, establishing global partnerships, delivering projects, and connecting people and organisations who are looking to contribute to the development of a circular economy across Africa. ACEN has been contributing to the World Circular Economy Forum over the last 2 years. And this forum, as Kemi said, will be held in Africa for the first time. It will take place in Kigali, Rwanda, and online between the 6th and 8th of December. ACEN is honoured to have been invited to co-host the forum along with the Government of the Republic of Rwanda, the African Circular Economy Alliance, and the Finnish Innovation Fund Citra. This event today is an official side event of the forum. Circular principles suggest that sources of energy should be renewable in nature to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which are a major contributor to the climate and ecological emergency the world is facing. Access to affordable and reliable energy is essential for the development of economies and societies. Yet African countries continue to be faced with major challenges in supplying sustainable, clean energy to its businesses and citizens. In conclusion, I hope that you enjoy this event, as it will provide a space where you can contribute ideas for action as we attempt to bring the application of circular principles to the energy sector in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for making very short. The ideas you have proposed are well understood, and I'm sure it will give us the opportunity for greater engagement in future times. The next person that we're going to have, who is going to be giving us a goodwill message, the very first one for that matter, she had been mentioned earlier on, and she had been described as one who has provided a lot of support for the African Circular Economy Network. She's Nigeria's ambassador to the Kingdom of Netherlands, and that's Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Eniola Ajayi. Can we welcome her online, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The chapter lead of ACEN, captains of industry within the energy sector, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to this all-important event. The year 2022 marks 2 years into the decade of action declared by the United Nations on the Sustainable Development Goals. Intensification of policies, processes, and mechanisms by the global community to actualize affordable, accessible, and clean energy. Goal 7 of the SDG has therefore become a necessity. Efficient transition from the traditional linear economy, which is characterized by take, make, dispose, flow, otherwise called cradle-to-grave design, to circular economy with its triple pillars of elimination of waste by design, respect for social, economic, and natural environment, and resource-conscious business conduct is an indispensable ingredient in the transition process. Invariably, this side event with the theme, Vision for a Circular Energy Sector in Nigeria, Opportunities Along the Energy Value Chain by the African Circular Economy Network, Nigerian chapter, in collaboration with AMPEC Nigeria Limited, has come up at the right time. In accordance with global best practice, the ambition to have a thriving circular sector, energy sector in Nigeria needs to reckon with a whole gamut of fundamentals. The fundamentals include, 1, the realization that circular energy sector is a byproduct of pre-existing circular economy. Number 2, circular economy is a generic notion which draws on several specific interdisciplinary approaches. Because all materials involved in commercial and industrial processes are nutrients that are both technical and biological, circular economy engenders sustainability by decoupling economic growth and development from the consumption of finite resources. Emphasis in this regard is on safe and potentially infinite circulation of materials and nutrients in cycles. The predominance of the end-of-life consideration of a product at the start of its life cycle encourages repurposing. The waste of one industry or sector becomes a potential input to other sectors. This is what circular economy scholars call the concept of cascading or cradle-to-cradle design, and the understanding that circular economy is modeled after nature's long-evolved low waste and energy-conserving process. This notion has been identified by the Geneva Product Life Institute in its identification of goals of cradle-to-cradle as product life extension or long life good, reconditioning activities, and waste prevention. Predicated on my conviction that the transition to a circular economy sector in Nigeria will not be a stroll in the park, ACEN's multi-stakeholder approach to achieving clean, affordable, and accessible energy is commendable and capable of generating positive outcomes. Looking forward, I urge ACEN and all stakeholders and participants at this event to seize the moment for community thinking on policy options and strategies that will culminate in the envisaged vision for a circular energy sector in Nigeria. Foremost among the policy options and strategies, in my view, is the need for broad-based education, sensitization, and advocacy in the following areas. We need to ask ourselves a few questions. How circular economy will facilitate net zero emissions without loss of livelihoods? How scalable energy transition can be achieved through materials transition process? how cradle-to-cradle certification in the 5 categories of material health, material utilization, renewable energy, and carbon management, water stewardship, and social fairness will enhance the process of establishing a functional vision for circular energy sector in Nigeria. How do we improve the share of electricity generated from renewable sources in Nigeria from the current abysmal level, given the fact that the medium to long-term electricity demand of Nigeria is between 30,000 megawatts to 192,000 megawatts? How is Nigeria's National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, approved by the National Council on Power, NACOP, in July 2016, can sufficiently serve and fulfill the expectations of ACEN and all stakeholders? Then, to what extent can Nigeria's Renewable Energy Master Plan, REMP, achieve the goal of the 10% renewable electricity base load of Nigeria's total energy consumption by year 2025? What can Nigeria do to speedily develop infrastructure and technologies to facilitate the attainment of circular energy sector and the resultant energy security? And what are the prospects and the scope of impact investments in the circular energy sector in Nigeria? On a final note, I wish to assure ACEN and all stakeholders of the support of the Embassy of Nigeria in the Netherlands in engaging Dutch stakeholders in the circular energy sector. The Dutch government and its private sector are keenly interested in working with Nigeria and other African countries in this sector, and the facilitation process by the embassy post-COVID-19 is ongoing. In the light of the foregoing, the imperative of sharing the outcome documents of this event with the embassy and subsequent events cannot be overemphasized. I wish you a rewarding session of fruitful and edifying deliberations. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Ambassador Dr. Eniola Ajayi, we are most grateful for that insight. Cradle to cradle, that's one of the things that we need to continue to put behind our minds so that we can continue to have the concept in focus. Having listened to her, I also like to bring forward another very important guest who also will be speaking to us online for the second goodwill message. Dr. Innocent Honor, who will be speaking to us in a few seconds from now, is a former climate change and green growth consultant at the African Development Bank. He was instrumental to setting up the Nigerian chapter of the Economy Working Group, a conglomerate of various public and private institutions that function as a hub of the circular economy in Nigeria. Dr. Honor led the working group until recently when he was moved to the AFDB headquarters in Cote d'Ivoire to take up a new position as the Chief Natural Resource Officer. I'd like to welcome Dr. Innocent Honor to also deliver his goodwill message. Thank you, Dr. Honor.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. May I humbly stand on existing protocols? Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me welcome and thank participants for joining this discussion this afternoon. The vision for a circular energy sector in Nigeria is long overdue, and I would like to really thank the Africa Circular Economy Network for organizing this event at such a critical time when Nigeria is seeking permanent solutions to energy supply and utilization issues. I bring you greetings from the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akiyomi Adesina, and the Director General of the African Development Bank Office in Nigeria, Mr. Lamin Barrow, whose leadership, under whose leadership I'm participating at this hybrid event. There are several opportunities for circularity in the energy sector. You can look at it from a utilities point of view. You can also look at it from a natural resources point of view. And the African Development Bank recognizes these opportunities. We are working tirelessly to address some of the barriers for energy optimization and cost minimization through application of circular economy principles in our projects and in our policy dialogue. The bank's country strategy paper for Nigeria outlines our strategy for supporting Nigeria to address economic shocks associated with the dual threats of COVID-19, pandemic, and oil price shocks. The strategy is focused on promoting structural transformation, inclusive and green growth, anchored on two mutually reinforcing priority areas: supporting infrastructural development and promoting social inclusion through agribusiness and skills development. Ladies and gentlemen, you can agree with me that these two reinforcing priority areas has a lot of opportunities for the secular sector. We are currently investing in several projects running into millions of US dollars in the energy sector, cutting across generation, transmission, and some ongoing project preparation in the distribution value chain. Reports by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in 2019 has estimated that transition towards the circular economy is a $4.5 trillion global growth opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, the question is how much of this will be attracted to Africa's energy sector? How much of this will be creating jobs and helping to stem some of the both educational and unemployment issues that we currently have in Nigeria? How much of these resources will be targeted at promoting resource efficiency, achieving climate change goals, as well as nature positive investments? Well, in Nigeria, the African Development Bank and partners are contributing solutions to some of these problems through our investment projects and through the Nigeria Circular Economy Working Group, which I'm very happy to be working with the Africa Circular Economy Network in also realizing. The working group is currently carrying out some key studies that would help to generate a checklist of energy sector related policy and project recommendations that would help to serve as a vision for a circular energy sector in Nigeria. Preliminary findings, if I may mention, include increased investment in waste management businesses and entrepreneurs across the country, including waste to energy value chains. There's a need for us to invest in research. The green energy sector is an emerging sector with a lot of opportunities, both in terms of technology transfer, in terms of developing green energy technology, as well as also building the capacity of existing institutions to be able to harness the potentials of both green energy, biomass energy, and the renewable energy space as a whole. The federal government of Nigeria has an energy transition plan. This plan will require a lot of investments, and from a financing and trade investment point of view, these are areas that need to come up with clear business models, bankable projects that will be able to attract public-private partnership investments. So in order to just wrap up the message, this event is ushering in the 2022 World Circular Economy Forum, which is also very, very strategic. As we deliberate in today's discussion, let's not forget that at the end of the day, all we're trying to achieve is to provide solutions to unemployment issues, to poverty issues, to epileptic energy supply issues, and how all of this can come together as a collective effort to lift Nigeria out of poverty and also help to improve the quality of life of Africans. So thank you very much for listening. I wish us productive deliberations, and as we commission the reports that I mentioned, everybody in this room through the ACEN network will be invited to witness the occasion. Thank you very much, and over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Honor. When as much as $4.5 trillion is available for spending in a particular space, then something drops in your mind immediately. That's the fact that employment will be created, and then, of course, there will be elimination of poverty. And that's a very, very major issue to think about, which brings me to the fact that one of the fundamental benefits that we'll get from circular economy is that it will help to reduce, if not completely eliminate, the issue of unemployment and, of course, the issue of poverty. And when people are no longer poor, one fact that will come very strongly to the fore is that crime and criminality will drop substantially unless there are other issues, which of course there are, that are associated with a desire to be criminal. So we see that this project or this emerging phenomenon is one that each and every one of us, country to country, organization to organization, sector to sector, must embrace very quickly. I'd like to thank once again Dr. Ona for that wonderful insight. Thank you so much. In a program of this nature, you cannot escape from a lot of talks, because that would help to provide the policy direction. We have on the program, if you have your own with you, the next thing is supposed to be the keynote address, which the chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission is expected to deliver. But like we said initially, or at the beginning of this program, because of his other engagements, he has requested that engineer A.B. Mohammed should do so on his behalf. And it's also my pleasure to very warmly invite him to the podium to do so. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the chairman, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, I'm standing here to represent him, and he sent me to you to convey his apologies for his inability to be here in person because he's attending another emergency with the Vice President's office. He, however, directed me to tell you that it is a great honor and pleasure to be part of this side event, and it has come at the right time, as the Commission is working very hard with other partners and agencies in the power sector to ensure a smooth transition, energy transition by 2025, as signed by the federal government of Nigeria. To achieve these targets, laudable targets, and create employment, reduce poverty, the Commission has initiated quite a number of projects, regulatory instruments, and some policy initiatives with the Federal Ministry of Power. Some of these initiatives have to do with, first and foremost, integrated resource plan for the sector, which has never been in existence. Integrated resource plan will have an all-encompassed plan for resources in the power sector, from generation to transmission and distribution. And kindly note that this integrated resource plan will factor in the energy transition targets we've been talking about, that the government has signed on to. Furthermore, there are many other initiatives the Commission and the Ministry of Power have brought about in the power sector. Some of them including the mini-grid systems. The mini-grid regulation provides for the use of off-grid small mini-grid systems and the underserved mini-grid systems, mostly to promote renewable energy resources across the country. It is glad to note that this particular regulation on mini-grid has attracted quite a lot of funding and investors, interested developers, and the impact is being seen. This is also in line with the energy transition program. Furthermore, there are other initiatives like embedded generation that would promote distributed generation across the country, use of small solar scales, wind, biomass technology, and what have you. We also recently introduced the distribution sub-franchising guidelines to also support smaller scale third-party investors that could come in to manage some areas of distribution businesses, including, that is the point of attraction, including additional generation. And that additional generation could come from renewable energy sources in most cases. Energy efficiency and conservation is another area that the Commission has been working all along in partnership with ACEN. Some energy label standards have already been done, and we're focusing on, at least generation part of it to ensure conservation, and then the utilization aspect at the consumer end to ensure energy efficiency utilization. And quite a lot of new markets, new frontiers are being developed to ensure that the energy sector, or the power sector in particular, progressed in a similar or in a passionate way that will ensure sustainability and sustenance of energy in Nigeria. With this little keynote, I would like to thank you so much and promise that the Commission will always be solidly behind ACEN in this initiative and will always support you, and the partnership will be solidified as we move ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Mohammed. Please give our kind words to the chairman for allowing you to represent him. It's also possible for him to say that, sorry, I cannot be in attendance, therefore nothing should be said about this program, but he has graciously sent you to represent him. We are very, very grateful. You have added color to the program. Thank you so much. There are two talks that we'll have, first presentation, second presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A session, question and answer session, so that we can get greater insight into what the issue of circular economy is. And the first one will be coming from the Director, African Circular Economy Network, and a circular economist and strategist, and that is Mr. Chris White. Mr. Chris White will be engaging with us online. I urge you to please just listen attentively so that you can also draw up questions, because this is an emerging area. It looks very strange to some people, but some people have caught the vision and are quite familiar with the content. So for those of us who are not quite familiar with it, it's an opportunity for us to get deeper into the waters of circular economy. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you to everyone. As mentioned, I'm Chris White. I'm currently a director of the African Circular Economy Network, as well as the ACEN Foundation. So today I'm going to, first of all, observe all protocols, perhaps with the greatest exception of our dear and close associate, Kemi. Always nice to be participating in these events with yourself. And also to my other ACEN and ACEN Foundation members that are on the call and everybody else who's listening in. I'm going to try and chat about a just transition, and this has been touched upon by a couple of the speakers already. Now, a just transition is not just about the economics of understanding energy. It's also about understanding the opportunities for social upliftment, empowerment, transformation, as well as environmental benefit and benefits to biodiversity and other opportunities. So we need to look at creating a transition that's going to include everybody. And that is key in terms of one of the previous speakers said with regards to the reduction of poverty and opportunities in terms of a sustainable transition going forward. So to put this into perspective in terms of Africa and energy, we all need to understand that Africa is energy poor. The simple reality is that we have some 650 million people in Africa without access to electricity. Now, South Africa, if you look at that, there's about 209,000 gigawatt hours put into the grid for a population of 59 million people. Nigeria has about 36,400 gigawatt hours. Forgive me if that's not up to date, but that's the latest information that I have. And that's for a population of 216 million people. Now, Africa has a total production capacity at the moment of about 700,000 gigawatt hours for a population of 1.4 billion. Now, the population is set to increase to 2.5 billion by 2050. Essentially, Africa runs largely on liquid fuels or biomass for energy. Any of us who've been in Nigeria or many other African countries, even in South Africa at the moment with load shedding, we're very much used to the hum of generators and the pall of smoke that's coming from biomass. So let's put this into perspective. If we look at this, South Africa has 30% of Africa's energy generation capacity. But South Africa only has 3% of China's generation capacity. New York State matches half of all of Africa's capacity, one state in the USA. And South Korea, which is 3 times the generation of South Africa, is only 12% the size of South Africa and has a population of 51 million. So it's equivalent to the population. We need to focus on changing the energy dynamic, and we need to look at the vast resources that are available to Africa. How do we contextualize this? So, sorry, there's a very wordy slide, but I want to try and get this information out here. So we currently face massive issues in terms of unemployment and poverty with an existing population of 1.34 billion. And as I mentioned, some 650 million currently have no access to electricity. And housing backlogs and other issues are already sort of in more than 100 million units across Africa. But the key focus here is energy. And the simple reality is that Africa is never going to be able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals without energy. Everything is reliant on energy. Access to reticulated water, agriculture, food security, agri-processing, manufacturing, transport, infrastructure, mining, education, health, any sector that you can name is really involved in terms of how we drive that transition towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. A lot of it relies on energy. Now, the size of Africa is often underestimated, and that's just because of what we've learned in school. Our traditional Mercator projections on the map shows Africa at a particular size, but the reality is that we can fit all of Europe, all of the United States of America, the whole of China and India into Africa, with space for a whole bunch more countries. Africa is blessed with land and resources, enough to supply the entire world. We need to capitalize on this, but we need to follow a sustainable path. We have sunshine for solar, wind for hydro, water for hydro, wind for renewable capacity, and an abundance of biomass and waste that can be converted into energy. What we need to do as a continent is to avoid the expensive and unsustainable mistakes of the developed North and implement scaled, sustainable, and viable energy generation. The previous speaker, I'm really happy to hear about the microgrids, particularly getting into policy. It's a key towards the just transition in energy. The simple reality is that transmission of electricity in traditional high voltage lines is expensive, it's inefficient, and the vast distances needed to transmit power across Africa just does not make sense. So microgrids are essentially a key component to that. The intense capital required for this also normally excludes normal people, the likes of you and I, from benefiting from this abundance. What this means essentially is that governments and global corporates control energy, and this drives the equality gap even further. This can be changed. All of the technology and all of the applications are currently available to do this and ensure a just transition to energy access. How do we visualize this energy challenge? And this focus needs to be changed to small-scale systems. We need to look at microgrid applications. And this is where ordinary citizens can benefit from cheaper and more reliable electricity, but more importantly, also be beneficiaries of this. So renewable and sustainable energy can be scaled from the household to the village to the city. The other thing we need to understand in terms of that is the cost of energy. So in effect, Africa and the poorest of the poor spend the most in terms of energy. So until we change that balance, the simple reality of a just transition is beyond our means. When we look at scaled applications, for example, solar energy, this can change the dynamic in Africa and reduce the reliance on service delivery from the public sector. Hydropower can be delivered at microturbine level from as small as 1 kilowatt output systems without the need for billion-dollar hydroelectric schemes. Now, hydroelectric schemes, if we look at the great dams that they're built in China and some of the stuff that we're talking about in Africa, these kill biodiversity, they kill riverine ecology, and they also cause political divide between countries, specifically where water is flowing across boundaries. Vertical and horizontal wind turbines can work at the household or community level. Waste organics can be scaled to provide gas or electricity from the household to the community to the village level. Biomass can be grown or harvested to supply small-scale gasifiers, avoiding the need for deforestation and charcoal production. And even waste plastics and tires can be converted to fuel for generators or gasified directly into electricity. Again, understanding that the opportunity in terms of recovery from waste products, particularly higher hydrocarbon wastes, we do need to follow the waste hierarchy. So recovery should be the last option to us. But essentially, we're looking at the moment across Africa at a huge problem in terms of a lack of recycling in these sectors. And this is an opportunity for us to plug into that as well. And even water can be reticulated for household or irrigation systems using pumps that need no electricity. The RAM pump has been around for 60, 70 years. It's a system that anybody can pick up off of YouTube to design, where you don't need electricity or energy to pump water. There is literally no need for massive hydro investments or fossil fuel extraction that impact the land and the air and destroy biodiversity and ecosystems. A just transition to a sustainable energy future is within our means. And if we ever need to ensure that we meet our goals of 2050 of net zero, the focus must be Africa. So in terms of financing the circular economy, particularly in terms of energy, what sort of financial sector commitments are there to help us drive the change? And what has changed recently, particularly looking at post-COP26 in Glasgow, was the signing of the Glasgow Climate Pact and the agreement to the Paris Rulebook. And other significant deals and announcements, not part of the COP itself, were also made during this conference. Specifically, if we look at in the last few years, international investors with global investments have been calling for transparent and reliable reporting by companies, corporates, banks, and governments on climate change and other environmental, social, and governance matters, or ESG reporting. And part of the ways to address these issues, the International Financial Reporting Standards recently announced 3 significant developments to provide the global financial markets with high quality, transparent disclosures on climate and other sustainability issues. And one of these includes the formation of the International Sustainability Standards Board. So the ISSB really is based to deliver a global baseline of sustainability-related disclosure standards that provide investors and other capital market participants with information about companies' sustainability-related risks and opportunities to make informed decisions. The ISSB will be responsible for setting up and recommending international sustainability standards for diverse industries and sectors and managing the related certification processes. And also review existing sustainability disclosures and determine how effective they support decision-making by investors, lenders, employees, and other stakeholders. That's important in how they support decision-making by investors. Remember that, because that essentially means that any investment going into the future is going to be critical to this. And the intention is for the ISSB to develop its governance structure in consultation, and the idea is to create a transparent and reportable system. Now, if we look at this alignment to global commitments, the simple reality is that we all rush off overseas, particularly our politicians, and we go and sign absolutely every agreement. Whether we're looking at UNFCCC, the Paris Climate Agreement, but how do we understand that and unpack that? So ESG reporting is a critical element to that. And this links into the IFRS and the ISSB, and specifically understanding then scope 1, 2, and 3 reporting. Now, Scope 1 reporting is the direct emissions that are from a company, looking particularly at the company facilities, company vehicles, and energy use. Scope 2 is the indirect, looking at purchased electricity, steam, heating, cooling, etc. But Scope 3 is vitally important because this now starts to look at the indirect components, both on the upstream and the downstream. And the reason why this is important is that a lot of organizations are saying, how is this going to affect me? Your SMMEs are saying, yeah, so the big corporates are going to have to align, but we're okay. The simple reality is that SMEs are the upstream and the downstream supply chain to the big corporates, to governments, to banks. So this is going to impact pretty much everything that we do over the next few decades. And as this becomes more entrenched, the ability to report your sustainability, specifically with regards to meeting Scope 1, 2, and 3 emission reductions, is going to be vital to doing business in the future. And this has been linked now to the ratings agencies. What that means is that everybody, your corporates, your governments, your banks, their ratings are going to be impacted, whether you're looking at standards, Fitch, all the other different ratings agencies. If we don't comply, we are not going to be significant in the future. So the opportunity now is that how do we align this climate finance opportunity with the opportunities in terms of circular economy applications, and energy is a critical component to that. And particularly if we take a low carbon approach. And some of the things we've been chatting about, particularly biomass, looking at forestation and other applications, for example, using agricultural residues, allows us that opportunity to bring in technologies on a low or a carbon negative or carbon neutral approach to provide a sustainable and just approach going forward. And that's how we need to embrace that. So this links into every sector. It links into not just the energy sector, because energy is also related to manufacturing, agriculture, mining, infrastructure, housing, tourism, retail, the financial sector. And we need to look at this calculation in terms of our global commitments to all of these things we go off and sign. The Glasgow Climate Pact, the Paris Rulebook, UNFCCC, UNEA, the United Nations Environmental Assembly. There's a plastic pact we've just signed there. As well as ensuring that we work in with our nationally determined contributions. So this affects everyone. It affects absolutely everyone. The opportunity is to grasp this with both hands and ensure that we work together to ensure a just transition moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We would have loved to take questions immediately, but I think what is proper is that we take the second presentation so that we can harvest all the questions and then respond to them at the same time. So the second presentation will come from the Managing Director of Trinomics, and that's the person of Mr. Kumrad Mekas.
Yeah, so the idea was to say something about what is happening in the EU. So I'm the Managing Director of Trinomics and also the Chair of ACEN Foundation. And so with the foundation, we are very active with the African Circular Economy Network Foundation in Africa and also in Nigeria. And at the same time, at European level, we are very active in helping forward European Commission and the Parliament and many member states to help them with energy transition. So the idea was to give the participants in 10-15 minutes time an overview where we stand with energy transition and what are now the key issues. Of course, this is a process that started already 20 years ago, so it will be very difficult to give you a more in-depth overview in the 10-15 minutes time we have, but I will try to do my best at least to give you a snapshot about the most important things. So I think, first of all, it's good to understand what we understand by energy transition and why we need an energy transition. So it's written down here clearly. It requires a long-term structural change. And that's already important, the first word, long-term. So that means that we have to think long-term if we talk about energy transition. It's not something they can do in 1, 2, 5 years. It will take 20, 30, 40 years before you go into the direction of a huge energy transition where you have a decarbonized society. So, and it will help then to create a more integrated and smarter energy system that is better able to manage and balance dynamic patterns of supply and demand at national, but also at regional and local level. And I think these elements are very important because we have to think about how do we want to set up an energy system, how should it be integrated, and how can we do it in a smart way to link it directly to the next bullet point. And these are only 2 sentences, but with very important points. Your energy system should be secure, it should be resilient, it should be affordable, clean, and sustainable. And these are all small words, but so important if you want to develop something in the long term, take into account each of these elements. So sustainable, clean, affordable, resilient, secure. At the end of my presentation, I have some slides that I took over from the International Energy Agency about the current situation in Nigeria. And there you see that we will have a long way to go to make this happening. But affordable, it's also something that everybody is looking at, not only in African context or Nigerian context, it's everywhere currently the main issue. How can it be resilient and affordable, cost effective? Yeah. Next, very short, again, this is about the energy transition level or issue at EU level. So since about, 5-6 years, basically since also we have the new commission in, and it's only about 3.5 years, we have, everybody's talking about the Green Deal. The Green Deal is basically, or the new Green Deal, a new piece of legislation, but it's in a nutshell, an umbrella of lots of pieces of legislation. So if we talk about sustainability issues in Europe, we talk about everything which is falling under the Green Deal, and also energy, and green energy is falling under the Green Deal. Also circular economy is falling under the Green Deal. Also climate related issues are falling under the Green Deal. But basically the Green Deal is bringing together lots of different pieces of legislation so that it's also clear for external people that when we talk about a Green Deal, that we do take into account all the different elements. So environmental issues, energy related issues, climate related issues. So they're all part of the big deal. What is important within the Green Deal, and it's existed already before the Green Deal, are in function of energy, the NECP. So the NECPs basically stands for the energy and climate plans at national level. So there is a piece of legislation at EU level where they said, look, it's so important that we try now to develop with all the different countries, how we should develop now in the medium long term an energy and climate plan. So basically all the member states, now the 27 one in Europe, have the obligation, and they started 2 years ago. So in 2 years ago, they had for the first time to submit an energy and climate plan where they do indicate the different steps. So what are you going to do to achieve your targets? So they have set up, first of all, at EU level, EU targets. Where do you want to achieve in function of energy levels and climate related levels? And so the 2020 targets are well known, and now we are in the 55 package, where we go even a step further by 2030, and by 2050, as most of you know, we want to be climate neutral. So every member state has to develop this kind of a plan where they do clearly indicate what are going to be the kind of investments in function of the technologies and in function of how they're going to finance it. And so because lots of member states received quite some criticism from the Commission that it's nice to have this kind of ideas and plans, but they were not in the first stage quite trustful. So they didn't really indicate how they were going to finance them, when they're going to be dealt with, and so on. And so the Commission came back to most of the member states saying, look, we need more clear plans, we need a clear financial infrastructure plan, how are you going to make this happen? Very important steps also from a legislative point of view regarding how to achieve your targets. It's first of all to see how can we reduce our energy demand. And That's also why I put it here again first. What you save, of course, you don't have to consume and you don't have to generate, which means that the EED and the EPPD, what we call now in total the renovation wave legislation, are really key pieces of legislation. The EED stands for the Energy Efficiency Directive, which is basically the umbrella directive about everything about energy efficiency for all the different sectors. And the EPPD stands for the Energy Performance Building Directive. So, which basically is only focusing on energy savings within the built environment. As the built environment is basically, depending on the member state, but on average, we can talk about 30 to 40% of all the energy consumption in Europe is going to the built environment, which is huge, followed by the industry and then agriculture and transport. So these are basically the steps. And that's why that there is a huge emphasis on buildings, followed by transport, because there we have seen the least performance, and then the industry, where we have already seen a huge performance over the last 20 years. Besides energy savings, what is also important is the renewable energy legislation. So we are now already at piece number 3. Some people call it RED 3, but it's basically RED 2+, which stands for the Renewable Energy Directive, as the RED 2 was revised last year. So also Trinomics has been revising this for the European Commission. We have been writing the impact assessment, where we have been looking at all the different steps of where can we make further progress in function of technologies, where we have to develop certain plans, like a biomass plan. We know that, for example, for most EU member states, there is no clear biomass plan. So if you look at the demand for biomass in lots of countries, it's only increasing, but the supply is lacking. And as such, it's so important to develop, first of all, your plan. What kind of a supply can we achieve in the next 10, 20 years, and how are we going to fine-tune that in function of supply and demand. The same counts for hydrogen. So hydrogen, it's the new Wahala in Europe. So we are currently working with 50 member states where we have to develop hydrogen plans, so basically roadmaps and action plans. But we see that they have huge expectations, but basically there is not enough green electricity available. So this is one of the big bottlenecks if you want to develop a hydrogen roadmap, is that everybody has these kind of expectations, but they don't know where the electricity, and we are talking about green electricity, and we don't talk about blue hydrogen, we talk about green hydrogen. And of course, also, the industry is not following. So you see that currently we have been helping quite a lot of member states with the just transition plans. Basically, these are plans helping the member states to develop their industry to get it decarbonized, where we see that even the big chemical firms in Germany, in other countries, are not ready yet to achieve these kind of targets they have in mind. So it's basically the starting point of the hydrogen market, where we are waiting basically on legislation, on developments from a supply point of view, and it will take another 5 to 10 years before we are that far. So that's all part of what we call the RED 2+. And then besides generation, of course, we need also infrastructure to bring all the energy we need to the right places. And that's why that Europe, and that's something they already starting to develop already more than 15 years ago. So what we call 10E, and 10E stands for the Trans-European Networks for Energy, where they have been thinking, how can we now work with all the different TSOs in all the member states, so the transmission system operators in each of the member states, and to get them working together. Also for a country like Nigeria, it will be quite interesting to see how the infrastructure can be developed in function of the most important needs. And so you will see directly in the next slides that we are still far away from what is now the most smart way to develop it. And in Europe, they have linked it to the Connection Europe facility, CEF, which is basically a facility, a funding mechanism, how they want to develop it. But making the link to funding, and you will see it in the next slide, that this is yeah, basically in all the countries you are working, in Africa, in Europe, in North America, in Asia, everywhere we have the same kind of issue. How are you going to finance your energy transition? Chris White already referred to it rapidly at a more global level. In Europe, in that respect, we are a bit further because since about 2 years, we have set up the Recover Resilient Facility. So started basically with the COVID energy, the COVID crisis, and the energy crisis followed, which basically the plan was developed into a facility with specific energy chapters. So currently, all the member states are developing energy chapters for the Recover Resilience Facility, where they have a budget of 20 billion to come with concrete plans and really plans with financial closures. So basically, they have 5-6 years to come with concrete plans how they're going to finance this, and all these plans should be signed off before 2026. So that's quite short in time, but there is also a huge need, of course, in Europe to deal with the energy crisis we are in. Besides the RRF, like we call it, we have the JTF, which is basically the facility that has been set up to finance the just transition plans. So where the focus is on the regions and the different industries. The industries they have been targeting in Europe in most of the countries were the steel industry, the cement industry, the chemicals industries, and so on. And there ourselves, we were involved in 5 just transition plans, also for Sweden, for example, where we have been closely following up on how Sweden was dealing with this JTP regarding the cement and the steel industry. And where we see that with a project like Hybrids, where they started now to develop the first on-the-ground developments to come with the first green steel factory in Europe. And so where we are going to use hydrogen to develop clean steel, basically. So we see that due to the pressure from the Commission and the need also to develop this kind of more carbon neutral industry, there is more and more focus, and also that the clients are really asking for more green industry. The Connecting European Facility, I already mentioned that. So that's really basically to finance our grids. And so gas and electricity grids, where also the aim was to work much closely together between the countries and between the regions. I think that's also interesting to take into account. Of course, we have in Europe already since 2003, 2005, the emission trading scheme. And a couple of years ago, we have set up the Modernization Fund, which is basically a fund to invest in low income in countries. So 10 countries have been selected in Europe, and with the funding coming from the emission trading scheme. And so basically all the industries and participants to the ETS funds, the money will go into investments, low carbon investments in these countries. Then, and I limited it to those ones because there are another 10 kind of facilities and funds that have been set up at European level, but these ones are the most important ones. We have set up the Innovation Fund. And why I mentioned the Innovation Fund, because it can be also interesting for Nigeria. In Europe, we saw that member states and also at regional level, they don't have the funding capacity to develop in big flagship projects like Hybrids, for example, or like another project with the cement industry, where they're going to use CCS and CCUS in Norway. And basically, these are big industrial projects where we want to achieve low emission factories. And we are talking about huge investments, and that's why the Innovation Fund was set up. And the big companies can fall back on this fund. Then, of course, a lot at 7-year horizon, so is going into what we call the big research funds. So the current one is Horizon Europe, and people have been following up Glasgow at the recent COP. You can see that many projects that have been presented were subsidized under these big research funds. And so also to achieve TRL levels, so technical levels of 7, 8, 9 to basically make this kind of technologies ready for the market. And then, of course, and that's also interesting from a Nigerian perspective, is there a need for kind of a clean investment bank? The European Investment Bank was initially set up not only to focus on clean energy, of course, but since now 2 years, the target of the European Investment Bank is that 100% of their portfolio of investments should go into carbon neutral investments. Yeah? Also highly linked to the taxonomy rules of the European Commission. Yeah? So, and of course you have this kind of big vehicle that helps also forward investments in projects. But there's still, just to put a side note, there is still a kind of a gap between the market needs and what the bank can do, because the bank is a AAA bank, and as such they have high standards to invest in certain of these projects. So that's in a nutshell a little bit the background about what is happening in Europe. This is our bread and butter, so we are working on a daily basis on these kind of things, so if people have questions, but I really quickly wanted to show you some slides about where we stand in Nigeria in this respect. And there you see that the total primary energy supply is about 157 million tons oil equivalent. This is rather big for African standards, but if you compare that with Europe, it's still very small. So just to give you some indication, if we talk about Belgium, and you look at the electricity consumption of Belgium, it's 85 terawatt hours. And so in Belgium, we are with 11 million people. If you compare it with Nigeria, you are with 200 million, and you are consuming 27. So nowadays, it increased to up nearly to 30. And so these are the figures for 2019. It's increasing, but it's not increasing in line basically with the increase of the population. But there is, in that respect, a huge need to invest much more in energy supply. So the needs are huge. So the latest figures I saw from the IEA is that you are between 40 and 60% of your population that is connected to the grid, and only 10% of your population can cook with clean energy. And so these are the kind of figures. And also, of course, together with your increased energy consumption, also your CO2 emissions are increasing, which is also normal. This is a quite interesting slide because it gives you an indication about electricity generation in gigawatt hours by source. So between 1990 and basically 2090. And there you see that, there is a huge work to be done to make this more fossil free. So still oil is currently in the IEA data, they stopped, but I know that there are still backup generation capacity from oil, and the biggest part is coming from gas. And then of course, basically with your PV solar panels, it's starting only today. So it's really very limited. And the ones you have, it's basically hydro, but it's still very small compared to the overall gigawatt hours. So we are talking about 5,000 gigawatt more or less plus compared to nearly 35,000 gigawatt hours generation capacity. And also if you compare the first slide with this one, between final energy production or consumption compared to generation, that also the losses in the grid is too high. So there also quite some profit can be made by decreasing the energy or electricity losses in your grid system. Next, just also to end with some positive note, is that your industry in function of carbon intensity has made some progress from 1990 up to today. So it flattened a little bit the last 10 years, but you're coming from much higher levels in function of grams per CO2. So there you see that it's going to the right direction, but there is still quite some progress to be made. I just wanted to give you this kind of main figures that you have an indication where you stand, and in function of energy transition, that there is a huge need to make the necessary steps. And to refer a little bit to what Chris said, there is a huge potential also in function of PV and in function of development of your long-term views. And I think also a clear, stable, well-developed NECP, National Energy and Climate Plan for Nigeria, it's really highly, highly needed. So thank you for your time, and over to the president of the session.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful session. At a time like this, you have so many moving parts, so at times it's a little bit challenging to put all of them together at once. But I'm sure that there will be one or two questions, both online and for those of us who are in person attending this program. I would like to encourage those who are online to drop their questions in the chat box. We will take about one or two questions from the online participants. But for the in-persons, we'll also take one or two questions. So if there are those who want to ask one or two questions, fantastic. I can see Nick seeking to ask questions, and I'm not surprised because they should be interested in this kind of thing. The other gentleman there, is it? Okay, thank you very much.
I'm Engineer Abi Muhammad, representing NERC. I took interest in the last presentation, and I observed they have quite a number of funding facilities windows, about 7 listed. I want to know if a project...
I hope COM is listening.
I'm listening, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to know if, for instance, a project in Nigeria can benefit from these funding windows he mentioned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. He wants to know if Nigeria can benefit from the funding windows that Mr. Combe mentioned in his presentation. The next question, please. Can you give him the microphone? Thank you very much. Do we have any question in the chat box? Do we have any question? Please go ahead.
Good afternoon.
We have some questions.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Greg Odogu. I'm a columnist for the Punch newspaper. My first question to Chris White, if he would like to throw more light on the participation of SMEs, because we are in a developing world and the informal sector, what exactly would he suggest that will play as our part in the upstream and downstream activities in this transition? Then the second one is to Trinomics. I would like to ask him if there is any chance for carbon trading to be part of the funding stream, carbon trading, because Article 6 right now is a problematic part of the UNFCCC, the negotiation, and just like he said, he was in the climate conference in Glasgow. So if he thinks the European Union or the European system is fashioning carbon trading to be part of the funding, then also if there is any scale up in green banking, so that we'll be part of the green banking stream. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's something I forgot to bring to your attention. I don't know whether you recall that somebody used the word wahala, somebody that is not supposed to know that word. Thank you so much. I have some other questions. Okay, permit me to just bend backwards a little bit. There is somebody who is raising a hand, so let's be gender sensitive. A female wants to ask a question with profound respect, so can we give her the microphone? Thereafter, we'll take the questions from the online session, harvest everything, and then the presenters can respond.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Fumi Iyoyibo. I'm a principal partner with Pristine Eco Aqua NG. It's an environmental consultancy. What we are discussing is circular energy, but we cannot run away from just transition. And I can see that just transition has been addressed. In a country such as Nigeria, where we are predominantly dependent on fossil fuel, how can a just transition be ensured? Because a just transition means that we are not leaving anybody behind. So we have this huge number of workers that are either directly or indirectly dependent on our current fossil fuel technology. how do we ensure that they are also not left behind? Are there examples from other countries that have transitioned into more sustainable sources of energy where we can draw examples from their transitioning process and therefore, use them as a learning curve in our own just transition process? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I have one question from online. I don't know who is going to take this. Otherwise, then I would have to drop it on the laps of Kemi Ajakai. How do we facilitate knowledge sharing, taking key lessons from EU and applying to the Nigerian context? I'll take it again. How do we facilitate knowledge sharing, taking key lessons from EU and applying it to the Nigerian context? Can the presenters respond to the questions as it applies to them? Thank you very much.
Yeah, the first question was indeed for me. So there was about, yeah, maybe I will go through all the different questions. I think that's the easiest one. So about knowledge sharing. So yes, I think there are quite some interesting lessons that we can learn, and not only from Europe, but also what is happening in Asia, what is also happening in different African countries as such. Rwanda, for example, is always a good example, but you have other African countries which are also giving interesting examples. But I think that if we talk about energy transition as such, the NECP is really one of the most important examples, where we have so many good examples about how should it be developed? What are now the key elements of a good national and energy climate plan for Nigeria? And so what are now the key, what should be the structure? What are the kind of elements that should be taken into account? How do you want to deal with infrastructure and transport? And overall, it obliges politicians to think in the long term. As politicians, and I was one myself, so I can tell you, they don't think long term most of the time. And especially also in Nigeria now, we have elections soon. People are not thinking what will happen within 3, 5, 10 years. And a national energy and climate plan obliges these politicians to develop things in the long term. So you should try to develop these plans so that you can develop and make the necessary steps. But like I said already in my presentation, you will never get a transition into 2, 3, 5 years. It takes time. So yes, there are more lessons learned, but I think this is, one of the key ones is to sit together with the most important people, with the private stakeholders, with the public stakeholders, with the Ministry of Energy, with a regulator, with eventually setting up an energy agency that can develop these kind of things. So this is, I think, something very important to think about. And a very important point, what somebody mentioned, what about if we talk about a just transition, is that we have to think about taking everybody on board. And this is not an easy question to deal with. We see that in so many different countries, that more and more people, and then we are talking about the lowest income levels, having huge amount of problems. Also, unfortunately, in Europe, where we see that in several countries, people, what we call energy poverty, where about 10, 20 years ago, we had only energy poverty levels of 2, 3, 4%. We're now in many countries, we are arriving at double-digit figures, so which means more than 10%. And we have developed then, but that's not the right way forward in my opinion, but because this is trying to find solutions for problems and not trying to find solutions for the causes, that they have then developed incentives and social electricity and gas rates to make also energy affordable for these low income levels. So this is a problem when you have highly liberalized energy markets. And I can tell you, I'm already now 30 years working in this field, that in the past, when we hadn't a liberalized energy market, that it was much easier to deal with these issues. Because we had just a national commission in most European countries dealing with energy tariffs, and this was affordable for everybody. Now we have much more volatility and much more shocks in the markets, which is of course not helping the least at least the poor people also in Western European countries. Then there was a question about carbon trading. Yes, so I think if you can set up a simple system, so when I worked as a chief of cabinet at the Minister of Economics in charge of climate change and energy in Belgium, I had to develop the allocation plans for Belgium. And my first question about ETS, so an emission trading scheme, was that it became very complex. And if you look at all the administrative burden that has been set up to deal with ETS, and it took about 15 years. So don't forget again that it was set up, we started to work on it in 2001, 2002, and that the first phase was starting up in 2005, and that it took another 10 years to up to 2015, 2018, before we had a well-functioning ETS market in Europe. So people sometimes forget that it takes time also in a European context to develop these kind of things. So yes, but I prefer, and that's my personal opinion, and I'm not the only one in Europe, that you don't go for an ETS scheme, a trading scheme, but that you go for a more simple way forward, and that's a tax scheme, a CO2 tax. It's much more straightforward, it's much more easy to develop, and the reason why we haven't developed it in Europe is because there was no unanimity to develop such a tax scheme, because Europe as a whole doesn't have the autonomy to develop tax schemes at national level. And then they went for the second best option, and that's kind of a trading scheme. Yeah, again, the administrative burden is so huge, and it took so long before it started to work. So I think my answer is clear. And then the first question was about, can we make use of these financial schemes from European level? So most European financial schemes are only set up for EU 27 member states, which means that you cannot make use of it. But at EU level, we have DG INPA. DG stands for Director General. INPA stands for International Development Help. And the budgets have been voted for the next 6 years. So we are talking every time about, we call it the MFF, so the financial schemes long term, which is 7 years at the EU level. There is a huge amount of budget for development in Africa. The latest figures I heard, it's more than 100 billion over 7 years. So which means that the basic elements can be easily financed by these financial schemes for Africa. And DG INPA is the main DG dealing with this kind of budgets. But besides DG INPA, there are other kind of schemes. And that's again something that can be developed much more. So you know that every European country nearly has its own development bank. They try now to work a little bit more together, but these development banks like FMO, GIZ in Germany, FMO in the Netherlands, and so on, they have their own programs, and also with Nigeria. So these schemes are already on the road. And it would be good, and I think there are at high level also in Nigeria, conversations between the European Commission and the Nigerian government about how Nigeria can make use of these kind of budgets. So Chris, over to you. I think I answered the 4 questions which were asked, concerned to me.
Thank you very much. I hope, Odogu, you are quite satisfied, and my sister, Mrs. Fumi, you are quite satisfied too. I understand somebody raised up his hand online, but I've also been told that Kuhn has responded to the question that was raised by the online participant. We've gotten to a point where Chris, okay, wants to say something. Okay, please come up, but make it short.
Sorry, yes, just to add to some of the stuff that Kuhn's put out there. One of the questions was the participation of SMEs. This is critical in terms of another question that came up was, how do we look at the just transition? The just transition is not just a move away from fossil fuels, it's looking at the different applications. When we look at the smaller scale type systems discussed in my presentation, we look at microgrids and applications. There's an opportunity there for the SME sector to become involved, not only in terms of procuring the materials, looking at the supply chains, but also in the processing and delivery side as well. So there's a number of different ways that the SME sector can get involved. This takes a big step. Unfortunately, in Africa, we have a very strong link between the energy and energy sector and the government sector. So there is a requirement for government to take that leap of faith, which I'm glad to see that there is already policy in terms of microgrids, because what that does is it takes away from the swings and puts on the roundabouts. So on the swings, we're losing in terms of that cost extra that we're putting into the man in the street who can't afford it. The roundabouts is where you're now creating SMEs, you're creating opportunities, you're creating jobs, you're looking at resource management, and those are opportunities which then create an additional tax base. And so we look at where the longer term sustainability is, and that really is in participation of the SME sector in the energy sector. And the other part of the just transition is to understand the circular economy, and energy cannot be seen by itself. So if we look at something like the projects we're developing in Africa, agricultural residues as one example, or grown energy biomass as another. There are opportunities there where you're getting an energy component which has a supplier database. So now you're empowering farmers, you're empowering producers and suppliers. But then we're also looking at cost opportunities to pay for waste streams and providing incentives and schemes where we start looking at collection opportunities. But then the benefit is the green energy. But on top of that, then the byproducts are opportunities in terms of creating regenerative agriculture. So we're now looking at applications, for example, like humic soil applications and biochar applications, which are then sold back into that agricultural sector that then increase regeneration and reduce costs on fertilizers, reduce costs on water, herbicides and pesticides. So the whole opportunity, and this is where the circular economy comes in, is that it's not just the energy sector. We can do this to then impact the agricultural sector, that impacts food security, that impacts health, that impacts education. And that's where the just transition is vitally important in terms of how the circular economy comes into play. So the other one really was the benefiting from the funding. I think Koen spelled it out very clearly in terms of what Europe can and cannot do. But this is also where one of the things that I'm trying to do along with others is to ensure that we start to develop mainstream funding and financing. Your governments and your banks in place should be developing policies around looking at net zero carbon type applications and putting preference onto those. So there is an opportunity there as well. And the final thing was on the knowledge sharing. How do we facilitate knowledge sharing? Well, A, we're doing that right here, right now. And B is to get involved with the likes of ACEN and the ACEN Foundation and the work we're doing across Africa and how we can work together to create this transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was just going to mention that having come to this point, I think it's only fair to everyone that is sitting. I'm about the only one that has been walking around except the camera people, and so I've enjoyed some bit of exercise. But you guys have been sitting, and I don't know whether if I clap for you alone, whether it will be sufficient to go around. But I'll ask that you take about 2 or 3 minutes music break. We'll use that opportunity to appreciate our sponsors, but during that time, you have the opportunity to grab a cup of coffee for yourself, biscuit, or whatever you want, but they will bring it in for you so you don't have to go too far away from this place. I don't know whether that compensates for sitting down all along. Does it compensate for it at all? Honestly, does it? Okay, I know it. At the right time, I'll bring him forward. Also, our discussants, Dr. Joy Ogaji that I've shown to you, Engineer Bolaji Sulu, and of course, the Chief Marketing Officer who is representing the Managing Director, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company. He is also one of the discussants in this session. If we are settled, I'd like to bring forward the representative of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. Can we give him a round of applause, please? Thank you very much. I have been told that he will make his presentation very short.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm excited to be here today. My name is Sugun Nadzimeke, and I'm the Executive Assistant, RIAN. RIAN is the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. So a brief introduction about RIAN. We're a non-profit organization that is founded by key players and stakeholders in the renewable energy association with the vision to promote strategies that will contribute to that will improve the contribution of renewables up to 40% of the national energy mix by 2030. So I'm just going to give a very brief, very short overview of the renewable energy sector in Nigeria. We all know that Nigeria has the largest economy in sub-Saharan Africa with a GDP of approximately $448 billion. And it's also the country with the highest, with the largest population in Africa with about 200 million people, with over 200 million people. But it's very unfortunate that about 40% of that population, which accounts to about 80 million people, don't have access to the national grid. So billions of dollars have been invested in improving the electricity supply in the country, but the demand for electricity continues to rise. This is due to two major factors, economic growth and infrastructural development, and then population growth. So Nigeria's population increases about 3% annually. In fact, a study I came across says that in 2050, it is predicted that Nigeria will overtake the US, as the third most populous country in the world. So we agree that demand keeps rising, but there's not enough electricity supply to meet, these needs. So a lot of people use, generators and the rest of them. We know the health impact, the negative impacts on our health, on the environment, and even our finances. So it is very, very apparent that alternative sources of generating electricity is needed in the country. And, this is where renewables come in. So Nigeria, as we know, is blessed with renewable energy resources such as wind, solar, biomass, hydropower, and so on. But solar seems to be the most popular and the highly adopted one in Nigeria. So that's because we have sufficient sunlight in Nigeria. We're blessed with an average of 6 hours per day sunshine, and I think in some parts of Nigeria we even have higher than that, and that makes solar a very, very viable electricity alternative in the country. But the solar market in Nigeria is driven by mostly foreign investments, attracting over 227 million from a range of investors. Although there is an increase in local fundings by commercial banks offering end-user solar loans for households and commercial users. However, there are still factors militating against the growth of solar market, which includes access to finance, lack of accurate data, poor skilled personnel, and corruption, and so on. But the public and private sectors are working hard to address these issues. The government is actively promoting solar electrification through policies, schemes, interventions, such as Solar Power Niger program, which was launched with the aim of providing energy access to 5 million households and also provide about 250,000 new jobs in the sector. The government is partnering with several development organizations such as OLON, USADF, HBS, that's Heinrich Böll Foundation, ASTAF, and the rest of them to provide financial technical assistance with regard to energy policies, regulatory analysis, and grants to companies that provide solar services. So non-profit organizations as RIAN, we are creating awareness and engaging with the public and private sector, to guide advocacy, policy formulation, and investment in the sector. Some of our members, like Energy Training Center, Greco Power, Rubitech Academy, these ones are setting up, training institutions to build capacity and to build, the energy, to bridge the energy gap in the sector. And RIAN, with our steady increase in membership, where we have a wider reach to, industry key players, and we'll continue to promote strategies that will improve, influence policies that encourage investment, sustainability, and contribution of RE to the national energy mix. RIAN has developed a lot of research studies. We've developed documents that, focused on driving local content in the sector. We've worked on a report on access to finance for the industry. We've done a report on demand-side subsidy and consumer financing, and one on women in energy. Yeah. So we are actively, involved in trying to improve the sector. I think we also have a document on ULAB. ULAB is use-led acid battery. And that document is basically to promote responsible battery management and disposal. So personally, I see renewables as the future of energy in Nigeria. But to reach its potential, the government needs to introduce more renewable energy interventions and to reinforce the existing ones. There's a very, very big need to create an enabling environment for investors and for even businesses that exist here in Nigeria to thrive. So there's need for collaboration between the government, the policymakers, and the developers to ensure that, and also on our part, we need to create, public awareness. We need to teach people. We need to educate the public. And I believe with that, we can ensure that, the renewable energy sector in Nigeria grows. So with that, I say a very big thank you to everyone present here and to those of us who are online. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We sincerely appreciate the cooperation that RIAN has pledged to have with us, and we look forward to greater interaction. So I'd like to invite very quickly the members of the panel, but let me first of all bring forward the moderator, because he's in charge of the class right now. Is Dr. Norbert Edoma. Did I get it right? Okay, thank you very much. He's an associate professor of energy policy and electricity planning, Pan Atlantic University, Lagos. They are based in Lekki, Lagos. In all of my interaction with professors, they're always on their feet. But since this admits of a sitting down arrangement, no problem about that. I also like to bring forward a very resourceful person who is going to be part of this discussion session. Like I told you before, if you don't know her, you don't know the Nigerian power sector. Her PhD is in alternative dispute resolution in the oil and gas sector in Nigeria. She got that from Warwick University, UK. Dr. Joy Ogaichi, Executive Secretary, Association of Power Generating Companies of Nigeria. You're most welcome, madam. Thank you very much. I also like to bring forward Engineer Bolaji Sulu, who is standing in for the DG Energy Commission of Nigeria. He's an energy management expert. You're most welcome. By no means the least, but even in the value chain, they're usually number 3, not because they are the least, but because they are the only ones that have the energy to manage the sociology of the business. Donald Etim, representing the Managing Director, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company. You are most welcome, sir. This session is going to be a short one because we are under pressure for time and people have to go back to their businesses. So Dr. Norbert is also going to ensure that we don't take too much time from the people, but we also need to be reminded that there are some people who are watching online. Thereafter, we shall take comments from Dr. Ayodele Oni, and then we'll move very quickly to the vote of thanks, and this program would have come to an end. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, including participants online. We're going to try to have this conversation with the panelists around four main themes. The first, to try to understand the issues in the sector, and then we move on to talk about issues around energy efficiency and how we are working and trying to address issues around circular economy through energy efficiency. And then the third has to do with issues around financing. And then the last but not the least, as is always important, issues around policy. So, I would like to start, not for any gender reason, but I would like to start with Dr. Ogaji, because she holds a very powerful portfolio, managing and representing the interest of all the electricity generators in Nigeria. A major issue that we have seen and we have encountered and we have experienced over time is this bone of contention between understanding of, for example, managing expected generation versus the willing capacity. You know, we see the tension at times. Oh, we've generated this much, and then not all that we manage to generate are being willed. So the main question is, what exactly are the generation companies doing to manage some of these electricity supply challenges, and how, and what are the concrete issues on the ground that they encounter?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the organizers for inviting us, and thank you and welcome fellow panelists, and thank you, Mr. Moderator, for that question. The question of balancing power generated with what is being distributed and transmitted has always been a burning issue, a burning question, to the point that Nigerians are tired of, oh, we generate megawatts, and some consumer groups have actually said, stop generating megawatts on paper. We want to see when we put on our switch that there is light and our fridge or freezer is working, that we are not interested in how much you generate. But the value chain is very, very critical. And the value chain, as we may know, a value chain is as strong as its weakest link. And the power sector is akin to that tripod that is carrying that camera. So one of the legs is a generator. The second leg is a transmitter or a transporter in Nigerian, maybe local language. And the third one is a distributor. Now, if any of the legs, just like the camera, if you take off one leg or one leg is not equal to the other, you see that the camera will not be steady. And that's exactly what happens in the power sector. Now, for us to have perspective, because today a lot of the speakers have been giving us a lot of data, and which is what I love, because data gives us an idea of what the problem is in perspective. So in 2013, specifically on the 1st of November 2013, the privatization took place of the generation and the generation and the distribution, because transmission remained with federal government, wholly owned, 100% still owned by federal government. So with the privatization, 60% was privatized in the distribution companies, and largely 100% was privatized in the generation companies. Now, the privatization was underpinned by what we call performance agreement. Now, the performance agreement contained KPIs, key performance indicators, for both parties. The distribution companies have their KPIs, the generation companies have their KPI. And both parties were given 5-year period within which to ramp up or to meet their targets. Now, if you check 5 years from 1st of November to 2018, maybe 31st of October, is exactly 5 years. So by the 5th year, by 2018, in fact, before 2018, power has been ramped up. For the generation companies, they were to ramp up capacity to 5,000 megawatts. And within that 5,000, within the 5 years, and then they will be still increasing generation capacity. Now, the design of the privatization was such that while generation companies are increasing, distribution companies are also making their network ready to take that equivalent of power. So the PPA, which is the power purchase agreement, and the vesting contract were designed to have a handshake. But till today, both agreements are not having a handshake. For example, I'll give you for example, the PPA has megawatts. Let me give you an example for Ugeli Transcorp Power. They have in their performance agreement to ramp up capacity to, within the 5 years, they were to ramp up capacity to about 650 megawatts. And by 2017, they had gotten to 715 or 710 megawatts. You can see that before even the deadline, Egbin was giving, Egbin of in Ikorodu, Lagos, was giving a KPI to increase their capacity to 1,100 within the 5 years. And by 2017, Egbin was already having a capacity of, in fact, by 2016, 2017, they were having 1,320. No, I'm just giving you just 2 examples. And the same applies to Geregu Power PLC in Kogi State. Their mandate was 414, and they had increased to 435. So if you cut across the power generation companies, they were willing to ramp up capacity and let Nigerians get as much power as possible. But another thing that was in the performance agreement was that while you're generating, you'll be paid 100%. And I'm here to tell any Nigerians, and they can go and confirm, that from 2013 till date, no generation companies have been paid 100%. And you know that the way the power market is designed, as power is flowing this way, the money should flow the other way down. And that has not happened. So you may have heard me on TV and different places talk, oh, they are owing us. They say they are not owing us. Then they come back and say, oh, we are not owing you up to some trillions, but we are owing you 500 billion. Okay, the one you're owing me, can you pay it? So until the 3 legs, like I've said, is strong on ground. And I'm not also discouraging our brothers in the renewable space. Because the same thing that is hounding the hungry generation is equally affecting them. I recall when Renewable Energy Association was registering, and I told them, well, you can register and come in, but you will see what we are seeing. Because it's the same thing. We have the policy, we have the regulation, and like today's presentation, very nice presentation, very factual, but then implementation is always our problem. So it's not as if we don't want Nigerians to have power, but the power is available, like I've told you. So as of 2020, power rose to about 8,000 megawatts. But if you see the utilization is between 3,005. It's just 2020, last year, the utilization increased to about 4,000. So which businessman will constantly see his resources just stranded, not paid for, not accounted for? Even though the contract said, I should just generate, they will pay me. Now we brought a Nigerian perspective to it. Why should I pay for what I did not consume? You've forgotten that you asked me to get a 12-seater bus for 12 passengers. And I put petrol, I bought the bus, I've gone into several contracts to get that bus available. And now the one I bring, only 3 passengers are in the bus. So should I not pay for the bus, or should I get a bus that can carry only 3? Mind you, as a lawyer, I have a contract, and I must keep to the terms of the contract, which is a performance agreement with BP. So The issues are so I don't know, at best I call it a conundrum. Most of the people who have read my publication, I always say the power sector conundrum, because it's a conundrum. As a professor, I don't know whether you have a solution to our conundrum. So this in opening speech, this is the problem.
Thank you very much. That's actually a very interesting introduction. Well, still throwing that light, but a slightly different issue now. I'll go to Donald, my friend here. In the distribution space, one big issue that we have seen is actually, what a good number of us are aware of, at least 40% of what gets injected is lost through different forms of both technical and non-technical losses. And I would like to ask really, what exactly are the distribution companies doing about this? What exactly are the issues around this?
Thank you for the question. Look, I wish I could speak about a whole lot more, especially as it has to do with distribution. However, let's keep to losses. So we have losses defined along 3 dimensions. You have the technical losses, commercial losses, and collection losses. And across all of these, depending on the age or the state of health of your network, your technical loss could be the thing crippling you. Assuming your network is very healthy, some human losses, which go to commercial, collection, and invisible losses could cripple you. Speaking from the point of view of distribution, what we have suffered a lot of, as a matter of fact, would be in the space of both commercial and collection losses. The technical losses have arisen essentially because of the age of the components of the network. So, what are we doing about these things? From a technical point of view, we have done a network analysis of all the components end to end to establish what is alive and what is dead. At Abuja Electricity, for instance, until recently, we had a huge backlog of malfunctioned or bad transformers, either power transformers or distribution transformers. We had no space at all in the stores. So when the new management came in, one of the things that we quickly had to do was get the store stocked up, build a workshop. Until we came on board, there was no workshop. So even while we were constructing that workshop, we started repairing transformers from a makeshift facility. As at maybe 6-8 weeks ago, we had repaired about 40 distribution transformers, bought I think about 80 new ones, and then gotten 32 power transformers, just to be sure that we get these things done. So that's one component. The other component is, and it's still technical, we realized that all or most of our feeders were overloaded. When your feeders are overloaded, you suffer a lot of overheating and losses arise therefrom. And part of the overloading was not because of planning, but because of illegal activities, even from the inside. Why do I call it illegal? We found a lot of undocumented network expansions. So you could have a network diagram that tells you there are 5,000 customers on a particular feeder, and you go out to the field. You see poles and cables that do not exist on the books. Maybe it's natural because every city in Nigeria is expanding. We identified a lot of all this, and we are currently deloading them across our franchise areas, be it in Niger or Nasarawa or Kogi. Within the FCT, we get accused of taking light from the poor to give to the rich. But it's not true. The rich are also crying. But we promise the crying will stop. So we are deloading the feeders everywhere and creating new ones equally. But that speaks to what we are doing in terms of technical losses. In terms of commercial losses and collection losses, there's a lot of energy theft, there's a lot of vandalism as well. So for commercial and collection losses, we have taken a few steps back to look at how we can democratize issues around metering and billing. So as I speak, and it's not common to Abuja Electricity alone, I speak in this case for every disco, we are all out there in the field metering our customers. As difficult as it may be, considering also that these are not NMMP meters. We are not going on the National Mass Metering Program, which the phase 1 is coming up from August 1. We are going under the Meter Asset Provider Scheme, where the customer advances the DISCO some fund, 63,000 thereabout for a single phase meter, and 117,000 naira for a 3-phase meter. And over time, the customer gets his or her money back through energy credits. Every disco is on the street doing that now because the meter is the neutral, independent arbiter across all the 3 legs that Dr. Ogaji is pointed to. You have to measure what you consume in a manner that does not generate friction. So we are doing that. We are also looking at using that to reduce issues of estimated billing, because that's how those issues will go away. And I call it estimated billing because maybe I'm a bit biased. Out there, you know, it's called crazy billing. So crazy billing leads to other crazy things happening. And we've introduced, even from our internal operations, what I would call soft infrastructure. Part of the soft infrastructure is to make sure that our customers can vend, buy power, or pay for electricity consumed very easily. We initially had some collection agents or payment partners, maybe like buy power, but we were not collecting. However, feedback we were getting from research showed that our customers would want to also come through paying through us. As a matter of fact, 100 naira commission would be saved for every transaction. So we opened up a vending portal on our website. Initially, the only gateway was Web Collect. Web Collect, people say, what is Web Collect? People go to what they're familiar with when it comes to their money. So we then decided to expand the options by adding Flutter Wave and then Pay Stack. So when you log on to Abuja Electricity website, you get those 3 options. Beyond that, we have as well put in at least 200 POS machines across our facilities to be sure that people can go in and pay. So this is how we look to reduce losses. But while we are at it, let me close on this loss issue on one subject, vandalism. Vandalism is something that initially I just thought this is an industry problem, a technical problem, because we see problems as human or technical. But of late, it's been so gut-wrenching that I struggle to speak about it. You know, the guys are used to jumping into our substations, ripping power cables out because they think the place is not energized. Well, thanks to, again, my sister Joy, we are getting energy. Everywhere is getting energized. So when you go in there, I would like to tell vandals, if you don't want to stop because you don't like AEDC, please stop vandalism because of your life. In the last 6 weeks, we've had more than 10 prominent cases of vandalism. We've had 4 cases for which we've secured conviction, jail terms. Those guys that got jail terms, I consider them very lucky. And here's why I consider them very lucky. Across the 4 cases, there have been other 2 cases where human beings have been burnt beyond recognition. And you start wondering, is this a human being? And just 3 days ago, we were busy evacuating a corpse from a site because a guy got in there and got electrocuted. He's dead. So to be lucky around vandalism, you go to jail. Otherwise, you meet your maker. So just stop it for your own sake.
Interesting. Thank you very much for that wonderful insight. Well, I'll go to Engineer Sulu. I mean, he represents government's interest here, and of course, he works a bit in the policy space. Well, as you can see, one of the big issues coming out here also centers around how to improve efficiency, right from generation stage all the way to reducing losses, and waste at the distribution stage, all the way to end use. Now, my question is, the National Energy Efficiency Policy, that plan that we have, is it working?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'll stand on the existing protocol. The policy is a National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Policy, which is the Ministry of Power is the custodian. But largely, the policy is for electricity sector, not the entire energy sector, largely. Yes. Aside, there is National Energy Policy, which is Energy Commission of Nigeria as the custodian. There is a chapter on energy efficiency and conservation. Policies are intentions, are wishes of the government. Before you can act on a policy, each concrete policy statement need to be gazetted before it becomes actionable. So I think this is the issue. For example, there is a policy statement concerning having energy efficiency, building energy efficiency code. So with the help of GIZ, the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing then developed that code, and it's being gazetted. So now people can hang on that and implement it. But the entire policy document currently is at the whims and caprices of different agencies to pick what they think and implement. Yes. But I think the right approach is, for example, I have opportunity to, I'm in a workshop, what the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is doing. They have what they call Saudi Energy Efficiency Program, based on their own policy. In that program, concrete issues are identified, money are allocated from the budget, concrete implementer from both the private and private and public are identified, target are set, timeline are set. So I think for us to implement the policy, we need to come up with national energy efficiency program. Yes, I understand there is a national energy efficiency action plan also by the Ministry of Power. But I think those of us who are accustomed with how we come up with policy and action plan, why it is not being implemented in the way we want is that I think we didn't take the right steps in coming up with those documents. So I think this is the the part that is being implemented currently is just with the assistance of GIZ under their Nigerian Energy Support Program. But as a government, we've not, I'm sorry, I'm from government, but I think we have to speak the way it is. We've not been able to do the right thing in terms of, in this perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would like to comment on it because policy is a bedrock upon any regulation or any law. So with my brother, and I'm glad that he's very frank and he has said it the way it should be. Now, first and foremost, let us look at the role of ACEN, Energy Commission of Nigeria. By their mandate, they are to set policies for the energy sector. And now the energy sector incorporates the power sector and the petroleum, the oil and gas. Now, let's just check by virtue of, or maybe look at their organogram. The Energy Commission of Nigeria in the Ministry of Science and Tech? Yes. So already you can see clearly There is no synergy there. An energy policy maker inside Ministry of. So how will he even supervise the policies from being implemented? Power is going in the frolic of their own. Petroleum is going in the frolic of their own. And he is there churning out policies. For who? So, first and foremost, we need to put things properly. I don't know whose interest it is for them to be put under Ministry of Science and Tech. I don't know. But I think we have done enough. It is high time, because especially the first presentation gave a lot of facts. We are going nowhere. We're just moving in circles. And we, the operators, are complaining, we are frustrated. And a policy that will enable us to operate efficiently is in disarray. So where are we going? You go to the regulator's website, there are so many regulations that are not underpinned by policies. No wonder when a regulator issues an order, the operators run to court, and the court just throws it out because it is not underpinned by policy. So it is high time we think collaboratively, because one word from the introduction I got was a coordinated collaboration. A coordinated collaboration, because we have been going at different paths that we don't even know where we are headed. All we are accumulating is just figures and facts that doesn't take us anywhere. When the first presenter was making the presentation, I was like, this guy seemed to have read my mind. Because for some time, I have been thinking, do we really know that we first got power in Nigeria in 1896? That's the first time power was generated in Nigeria. If you check our record till date, it's 126 years of trying to generate 4,000 megawatts. Divide it into 126, it's 31 megawatt per annum. Will that even light which village can take that megawatt? And meanwhile, we have humongous industries that are yearning for power. Manufacturers Association are always crying their fuel cost has gone with the diesel now. Before it used to be 40%, but now they are saying it's over 60%. He is talking about vandalism. I'm talking about non-payment and inability to push out all the power. The power generation companies have installed capacity of 13,427 megawatts with an expansion capacity that can double that. But even what they are generating is not being taken, so how will they even expand? So where is our vision 2030 of 30,000 megawatts, out of which 3,000 megawatts will be from renewable energy, and 27 will come from other sources, which is the gas to power? How many projects are in the pipeline? Knowing the gestation period of power generation, minimum is 3 to 5 years before you get one power plant out. And we have 2030. This is 2020. We have 8 years. How many projects are in the pipeline to give us vision 2030 of 30,000 megawatts? Or is this also good for the paper? Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, I was about to direct some questions also to you, and it's good that you responded to that. But maybe I'll still come back to you and Dr. Ogaji. A major issue, and there's a reason I threw that question to Engineer Sulu, because a major issue that we have also seen is fueling the plants and security of supply with regards to the fuel itself for the power plants to actually continue to be on. What are the issues you face around, particularly your people in your organization or what exactly do they face when it comes to fuel to guarantee supply?
Thank you so much for that question. Now, if you do your research, you'll find out that about 85% of power generated comes through gas sources. And although we claim that, the gas is our own, the gas is produced, I bet anyone here, when you go out, please check on the street if there is any gas flowing on the street. There is none. So somebody has to get loan or fund, if the person is a deep pocket, and get the pipeline, get license to first of all produce gas, and then pipe this gas to wherever it will be needed. So that person who has sunk such amount of money, the fact that the gas is yours, should he give it to you for free? I don't know. The answer is a rhetorical question, so you don't need to answer. So this is a challenge we have. So since about 80 to 85% of power is generated through gas, we need gas to be able to generate the power. And the gas suppliers, if they send the gas outside Nigeria, they sell at a very good rate and in dollars, hard currency. So prior to the privatization, gas was a big problem. Under the then Minister of Petroleum, Desiani, I can't, Madweke, yes, I've gotten the second name now. Yes, when she was the then Minister for Petroleum, gas was a big problem because the gas suppliers realized that domestic buyers are not paying for this product, and they are not serious, while international buyers are ready, money on hand. So they prioritize international markets. But with the privatization coming, the two ministers of petroleum and power sat down and said, see, we need to do something, otherwise this privatization will fail. So they came up with an MOU where they now set targets for each of the IOCs. And that is called the DSO, called the Domestic Supply Obligations. So on Shell, you have a domestic supply obligation. For Ajip, you have Chevron. So once you have met this target, then you can send the rest. Now, this domestic supply obligation is not set so that they will give us gas for free. In order to also make it amenable to local consumers, they also brought down the price. As at then, our price for petroleum, for gas was $1.50. Why transportation? Because it's one thing to pay, another thing, it has to be transported. So the transportation cost was 30 cents. But in 2015, going to 2016, the gas suppliers complained that there is no parity, there is no cost parity with a local and international. And in order to make them comfortable, the price was reviewed. And it was reviewed to $2.50 for the molecule and 80 cents for the transportation. Although this has just been, the molecule has been reduced in August last year by the current Minister of State, Petroleum, to $2.18 for DSO quantity. But anything outside DSO, you have to buy at the international parity market. So some of the Gencos are actually buying gas at $4.50. And while those of them that are within the DSO are buying at $2.18. So when you hear, gas price is $2.18, why is the tariff increasing? You have to also know what component of DSO do they have. Some of them have a mixture of both. Some, like the legacy plant, some of them have fully DSO quantity. So how do we assess gas, like you have said? First, for us to assess gas, the gas suppliers want us to provide letter of credit, a bankable letter of credit, not a verbal letter of credit, because talk is very cheap. So in essence, to bring it down to Nigerian level is money for hand, gas for your plant. So, and for us to be able to provide that letter of credit, we have a middleman called the bulk trader. So the bulk trader, by the PPA, which is the power purchase agreement, is meant to provide us that letter of credit, which we will in turn give to the gas supplier. But now, that is not happening because Embed said he refused to give them his own letter of credit. And when they tried to take it by force, they ran to the court and took injunction. So the conundrum continues. So we can't get gas, but Nigerians are calling, give us power, we need power, there is no power. I need gas. The gas supplier say money for hand, gas for your plant. And for me to get gas, I need the letter of credit, not just the letter of credit, plus a good payment plan that they can see, not just hear. They want to see it and touch it like Thomas. So that is our problem. We are ready to generate as much as Nigerians can take. So I gave Nigeria, the government, a solution, which I'm also emphasizing now. The solution is Nigeria, the government can give us gas. Because you know that the gas supply, the JVs, government is about 60% owner in the JV with the gas suppliers. So just give us gas through your 60%. We will not ask you to pay us for gas. When the consumers pay, collect your money up front. Just pay us for our capacity. Let us just be giving you power. That way, we don't need to cry about gas. Just give us gas. Tell NNPC, give them gas as much as they want. And measure it. When they pay, collect your money first. Give us the rest. Because as it stands, the average invoice of the GENCO, 70% of our invoice is a gas cost. So we are more like debt collectors for the gas suppliers. But like the discos, the consumers or the market is seeing GENCOs as being paid X amount. But out of that X amount, 70 to 60, I give it to the gas supplier, who nobody sees in the market. But without his product, I can't generate. So, and hydro is just about 15% because we have 3 hydros, Shiroro, Jeba, and Kainji. All put together is less than 1,500 megawatts. So, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited because at least it's to help our audience to understand the complexities around electricity supply. Now, I'll go to my friend Donald, and then he mentioned something. Okay, we are already discussing some things around energy financing, which I find very interesting. He mentioned something about, repairing and replacing transformers and all of that. And all of these things cost money. I remember in my previous life, before I switched to academia, I worked with some of the top OEMs in this sector, and I know very well what the price of a transformer is going for now. It's not cheap. But now, how do you manage to finance some of these projects? What are the challenges you face when it comes to financing some of these projects, and how do you go about it?
Okay, thank you. Let me think like a finance man now. So I'll use very few words. I realized that our revenues were escrowed, or currently are escrowed with the CBN. As at the time the new management took over Abuja Electricity, we met as part of the work in progress a list of performance improvement programs that needed to be implemented to improve the quality of supply and the state of the network. So don't forget, I also mentioned that we did a bit of extensive network analysis to see where the issues were. We were able to pull back this list to say what is critical. Because what was critical as at maybe October, November 2021, some of them fell into insignificance because of the priority of the time. So we reprioritized that list, and then based on our findings, repopulated it with what was urgent and critical. And then we took this list to our funders, or the guys that hold our money, the CBN, and sat down and had a discussion with them to allow us a certain amount of financial waterfall to be able to make those investments. As at the time I checked the last time, they were generous enough to give us hundreds of millions of naira to be able to, how much one transformer costs. So for us to be able to undertake extensive network revamp and essentially look at making sure that technically, we are back to standing on 2 feet. The CBN supported us all the way and is still supporting us. But beyond these technical investments, the earlier investments we had made in people, because you need people to drive the processes and the technical components. The earlier investments we had made in people, i.e., the indebtedness we found on the ground that had to do with staff, employees, maybe your 13-month salary not paid, check dues for union not paid, what do you call it, pension, health insurance, all of those things were not available because the company had been owing. How we will be able to defray that investment was through the graciousness of UBA. So till tomorrow, the average Abuja electricity employee is grateful for what the United Bank for Africa did for us. So that's how we've been able to find funders.
Interesting. I know there might be 1 or 2 questions from our online participants, but I would like Dr. Ogaji to also mention something around financing generation projects, because she highlighted some things in that direction.
Okay, thank you so much. Financing, like he said, when the privatization was thought of, a lot of interest, it exonerated a lot of interest. It resonated a lot of interest globally. As a matter of fact, about 152 consortia indicated interest in the privatization in Nigeria. But just before the first round, they all withdrew. Don't ask me why they withdrew, because I cannot say it. However, they withdrew. So, having withdrawn, the Nigerian investors had to rescue their country. And in order to rescue, of course, we do not have such huge amounts. As a matter of fact, the privatization raised about 2.5 billion USD. Maybe some deep pockets in Nigeria will have it, but I don't know. I've never touched $1 billion, talk of in dollars. So as I was saying, so it's a huge investment. So there is no way one particular person or one bank can fund all. So I think the Nigerian banks were exposed, just as he has mentioned, UBA. Nigerian banks were highly exposed because the government promised them that it's going to be a viable business, just like the telecom, and they all came to support the investors. However, they couldn't raise all the money, so some money were gotten from foreign countries. So the acquisition loans and those fundings were dollar denominated. One thing I didn't mention is in the power generation subsector, almost about 98% of everything is dollar denominated. Our spare parts, none is done in Nigeria. It's dollar denominated. Gas is dollar denominated. You heard me mentioning $2. Even though it's a domestic product, it's dollarized. Our OEMs, as you have mentioned, for them to come in is dollar denominated. So everything end to end, apart from salaries, every other thing in power generation is dollar denominated. And in 2013, when the privatization took place, dollar to the naira was about 155 to the dollar. So I just want you to do the mental mathematics, and I know the difference between 155 and 615 or more. So knowing that those acquisition loans are still dollar denominated means that the gencos that took those loans are really seeing it. That is notwithstanding that they are pressurized to keep generating without even payments or full payments. So we are having a lot of financial challenges, and most companies cannot even pay salaries at the end of the month. I know it. As you know, the association, I manage the association for them, and As this is July, I can tell you that out of my 13 members, up to 5 have not been able to pay their annual dues. It's as bad as that. So it is very, very difficult for the generation companies to survive in the current market. You have tied your money from 2013 till now. Your money has not been paid, and the contract has been amended unilaterally. I know there are some lawyers here, and you know that bilateral contract should not be amended unilaterally, but it is done here. And today they said, we entered energy and capacity with you, but you know what? We can only pay you energy. And even the energy, guess what? We can only pay you 30% of the energy. So how do I meet my other obligations? OYO. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. I'm sure we should be rounding up by now.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I mean, to start to round up, I'll need to go back to Engineer Sulu. And we have this 2030 roadmap. 30 megawatts by 2030 with 30% coming from renewables. Engineer Sulu, with all of these things we've heard, are we really on track?
Thank you very much. And the first thing is, it's good to have a plan. Okay, and the vision 20-30-30, that 30%, 30 gigawatts or 30,000 megawatts, and 30% of it should be from renewable in year 2030. So 30% of 30,000 is roughly 9,000 megawatts of renewable. So that's solar, wind, hydro, and water fuel. So, but today, grid-connected solar, solar that is grid-connected, nothing. And the regulator is saying our current grid capacity cannot take more than 1,000 megawatt of renewable. Okay, so as the doctor said, concretely, what are the projects on ground for us to meet that target in the next 8 years? The projects are very few. They don't add up to half of that. Yes, and even in addition, that half of that renewable should be from solar. That means 4,500 should be from solar. So, but I think we can achieve that, we may not achieve that, but I think what is the fundamental issue is the way we plan, the way we issue our policy. I think we have to address that. A good example is what I read about Ghana energy policy. They took 2 years to establish the baseline data. After that, they worked for some years to come up with the policy. But what do we do in Nigeria? We meet in an hotel and see that everybody bringing figures, correcting grammars, all these things come up. And as we are preparing the policy, the starting point is last year. Like now, the renewable energy, National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency and some other documents, they had time frame of 2020. All those things are already things of the past that we didn't meet. So I think the basic two things, we need to go back and address the way we issue out policy and plans. Second issue is that coordinated collaboration and synergy. In Nigeria, the system of energy sector we run is not a unified one. We don't have Minister of Energy. Countries where there are Minister of Energy, the minister is in charge that coordinates everything. Based on the Act of Energy Commission, is the presidency that's supposed to coordinate the energy sector. Unfortunately, right from even President Obasanjo's time, that has been abused. He only had senior advisor on energy. Okay? Then Yaradua came, they set up National Energy Council, with Petroleum and Power Committee. Later on, during President Jonathan, the Power Committee became the National Action Committee on Power. Okay? Okay. As each president is going, all their hard work arrangements follows them. So there is no continuity, and so I think we need to address the way we coordinate the sector, and we need to address the way we come up with policy, so that if it is only 5,000, if it's only 10,000 we can meet in year 2030, we should be very sure that this thing will be able to deliver it. Please, I think we are talking of energy transition and this. Yes, what the world is saying today with the Russian-Ukrainian war. Yes, the climate is changing. We have to address it. And that is what brings about energy transition. We need to change the way we relate to energy. But we should not overburden ourselves. We like it or don't like it, the climate will change. But we have to ensure our energy security. And this is what is happening in Europe. So all these things, the NDC, energy transition that was presented, and see for all of these documents, we need to really look at them and see it in the way that we will not do injustice to ourselves in trying to satisfy the global community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just to wrap up, if you don't mind, just if it's just 1 minute closing thoughts, closing remark for based on what we have discussed, and how do we, in the midst of all of these challenges, really still tread along that path towards a circular economy within the energy sector. I'll start with Donald.
I think what I can say very quickly is that we need to, maybe speaking through Kemi to the platforms available on the outside, we need to sit back, take the policy component, take the coordination component of it, involve all the stakeholders, and try to paint a national picture of what really a circular economy is and what it can offer. The beauty it will bring to sectors like agriculture, power, telecoms, ICT, medicine, health, and so many other things. And then we take it seriously as a country. Maybe in 10 years, or the 2030 we are talking about, we will not be implementing, we will be seeing results, outcomes. Look at Rwanda. They are delivering blood samples, but with drones. And it's just part of a circular economy. So we should paint a national picture of a truly circular economy, what it means, and the opportunities it will bring for us as a country. Thank you.
Thank you. He has almost said everything I wanted to say, but in closing, for this circular economy to become vibrant, integrated, and efficient, we need to think deep and adhere to a number of principles that will enable our economic growth. And one of such is strict adherence to corporate governance. We are very, I don't want to say it. The second one is sanctity to contract. Like he has said, other countries do an inventory, do a study before they come up with a policy. Our own, we already have the policy before they ask for it. It's just a matter of changing the date and changing some things and put Nigeria where there is Cameroon, and then we have our policy ready. And so it is, you're not able to implement it because there are no indigenous factor in it. Because I don't have time. My PhD was on alternative dispute resolution processes. And when I found out the way we resolve conflict, especially the Niger Delta communities, community versus community, oil company versus oil company, the conflict was just ravaging. I decided to study it, and I came up with three models. I came up with a hybrid model, I came up with an indigenous model, and I came up with a westernized model. If you want to know the details, you ask me later. Now, these three modules were to resolve the conflict of the parties that were within the gas to power, oil and gas sector. Similarly, we must start thinking indigenous. That law you're bringing from India, how does it apply to Nigeria? How can the communities buy into it? Or their views doesn't matter? So for a secular economy, we must think indigenous. What works in Nigeria? Because what will work in Kigali may not work in Nigeria. And we must not think that because it works in Kigali and Kigali is in Africa, it must work in Nigeria. It wouldn't. The last thing is sanctity to contract, like I said. The moment we are signing contract, that's why most time we don't even look at our contract. To read through the contract, get experts to read through the contract to know if your part is well protected. We are very quick to signing contract because we already know from the date of the signing we're going to break it.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much. To part with, I want to say two things. I think circular economy, the terminology has been around for some time. Circular energy is just coming up. So, and we need to integrate the two properly. The second one is also related to this. The way we develop our energy sector, we need to rethink it. We are developing the sector autonomously, but energy is to power our socio-economic development. So we need to identify the socio-economic development and the amount of energy we need to power it. So that is when, things we work very fine. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much from the moderator. Like I said, I'm excited by his own area of academic discipline. It's some. I wish I still have the time to go back to school. I probably would have looked at that possibility. I know Donald very well. I know Dr. Joy Ogaji, but I want to speak to the frankness with which engineers Sulu has spoken this afternoon. It's not the usual practice of civil servants to be that brutally frank with their state of mind. I mean, one thing that has come very clear is that our policies in the power sector requires a more ordered process. I'd like to thank you for being so frank. Well, Dr. Joy, I always know how to thank you. You can see the passion in her. But I just pray that we get to that power sector. To Don, I'd like to appreciate you for your calmness and candor. Incidentally, he's a chemist, and I'm wondering what a chemist is doing in marketing. Maybe it's marketing chemicals. Thank you so much. Dr. Norbert, it's wonderful meeting you. I do hope that we'll have the opportunity to interact with you beyond this point. You're most welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask you to go back to your seat, but don't leave the hall because there's a short cocktail after this program, and that will come up in another 10, 15 minutes from now. I'd like to thank our online guests. We have not forgotten you. I know that in another few minutes from now, we'll bring up Dr. Ayodele Oni of the Bloomfield Law Firm. Dr. Ayodele Oni will be sharing some of his thoughts with us in respect of the concept that we have continually examined for about 3 hours now. Once again, Dr. Ogaji, we are very grateful. Engineer Zulu, we are very grateful. Mr. Don, we are very grateful. As soon as can we begin to bring up Dr. Ayodele Oni so that he can share with us his thoughts on the issue of circular economy. I know very clearly that Dr. Ayodele Oni has some books in the market. I hope I am not doing some free advert for him, but it has to do with the power sector, the energy sector, and I've had interaction with some of those books, and I'd like to say that they are quite engaging in terms of cerebral quality. Dr. Oni would like to take your reflections on the circular economy, and I'm sure you would like to just speak to it in about 5 minutes or so. You are most welcome, Dr. Oni. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks. I truly appreciate and thanks for the free marketing. Okay, when we speak to the circular economy from an energy perspective, we're looking at a number of things. We're looking at preventing or substantially reducing waste. We're looking at efficiency, And I believe that when we speak to those two issues, we may even be looking at, in a country like Nigeria, energy federalism. You know, in preventing waste, you want to ensure that every region uses the resources readily or most readily available to that region or to that state. Whether it's wind, whether it's solar energy, renewables generally. And in some cases, I'm sure many of us are aware that very recently the European Union started pushing for gas to be considered as green energy. You know, so I guess that's one of the outcomes of the war between Russia and Ukraine. So to reduce waste, we need to do all of this. But it then goes to policy, and there's a lot that was said by the last panel around energy policy. You want to ensure that there's coordinated policy because policies form the foundation of rules and regulations. Rules and regulations will be haphazard and they wouldn't make sufficient sense, and enforceability will be a problem if they don't flow from, I have 5 minutes, so I think I've got like 3 more minutes. If they don't flow from good policy, you know, even when you have seemingly good laws, they may end up being inconsistent and they may be mismatched. Now, the challenge we've had in the power sector, now people will say what you readily have available, which is gas, you've not made the success of it. You're speaking to renewables, you're speaking to having a circular energy sector, which will have substantial roles, which renewable energy will have substantial roles. So I think from a regulatory point of view, there is a need to have coordination between policy making and regulation. That's one. Secondly, I would say my view has always been that in terms of generation, whether it's renewable or otherwise, Nigeria doesn't have a problem with the generation segment of the value chain. I think the problem is largely transmission and distribution, because remember, money comes from you and I, the consumers, the industries, factories, and the money goes up, goes to generators and co. The generators then pay 60 or 70% of that to gas producers. So if there's something wrong with distribution or wrong with you and I in terms of, so we all have a role to play. In terms of energy theft, that's you and I. In terms of vandalism, that's you and I. However, in terms of market discipline, in terms of investing in infrastructure and the equipment, that's the distribution companies, you know. So there's need for coordinated collaboration. Everyone does have a role to play. You and I have the role to pay our tariffs, to pay invoices. Distribution companies have a role to play in terms of infrastructure, market discipline, substantially reducing corruption. Remember, these distribution owners of distribution companies bought the distribution companies on the basis of their promise to reduce the aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses. So that's very crucial. And like Dr. Ogaji mentioned, they had KPIs. In fact, if you remember very clearly, I think I've got 2 more minutes. If you remember very clearly, when the bid process went on, the governors of Edo, Delta, Ondo, and Ekiti set up a bid for Benin Disco and bid higher than the video consortium. But because the basis for determining who got those distribution companies wasn't strictly on how much you bid, but on how quickly you will reduce the aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses, because it's a value chain. And in a value chain, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And question also is whether judges have been carried along enough and have been sufficiently informed and trained. Because like Dr. Agaji alluded to a few times, even if it's a good policy, once a distribution company or a licensee feels something doesn't favor them, they immediately rush to the court and get injunctions, you know. So I think we need coordination beyond licenses, coordination beyond the value chain, coordination with gas, coordination with gas producers, coordination with even the judiciary and the executive. so that we have the right policies, the policies are well coordinated, regulations are made in line. Because I say to people that laws and regulations are vehicles for implementing policies. Policies by themselves are not justiciable. You can't go to court, generally speaking, over a policy, but you can't go to court. You can go to court over a regulation. You can't go to court over a policy. I'm in my last minute for this. So we need to do a lot. Everyone has a role to play for us to even achieve the 2030. A lot needs to be done. That's 30% being renewable energy in 2030, because we've got barely 8 years to achieve that. So if there's a problem with policy, if there's a problem with the value chain, if there's a problem with gas that we have in abundance, then it will be a struggle. What I see is a good market, a large market, and Nigerians are willing to pay for electricity. All that needs to be done now is to ensure that we have the right policies, to ensure that there's coordination among licensees and market participants, and to ensure that there's some reorientation among the very few people who vandalize and who steal electricity. I think with all of these, we can make progress, and because of the size of our market, we can have investors coming to support what we're doing. Thank you very much, and I wish sector luck.
Thank you, Dr. Oni, for sharing your thoughts with us. I remember clearly, correct me if I'm wrong, I remember there was this slogan some very few years ago saying that by the year 2000, housing for all, by the year 2000, school for all, by the year 2000, roads for all. Now we have started by the year 2030, energy for all. If between year 2000 and date, that's about 22 years, we are still struggling with housing for all, then I wonder whether we can give energy to all in the next 8 years. But Nigeria has a way of performing their magic. I understand that in Egypt, the head of the power sector reports to the president or the king of Egypt every morning on what the sector is looking like. Every day there is a report that he has to present. That tells you how important electricity is and the energy sector in its entirety. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have come to very close to the end of this program. I don't know if Engineer Oladapo Gunjano is around. He's the COO, Chief Operating Officer of Aquivis Technologies, one of those who have provided a lot of support for this program. You'd like to step forward and share your thoughts with us?
Thank you very much. I did a mental math before I came up here. Just challenged by this 30,000 megawatts thing. And it just dawned on me, like, we probably need to add about 2,500 megawatts year on year, every year, for the next 8 years, and add that to the existing base capacity to be able to achieve that. So I think that just tells us the enormity of the task that is at hand. If those targets cannot be met, maybe they should be revised. And I'm very, very happy with the reality that Engineer Sulu brought on when he was speaking about the need for policy. If you look at from the generation side, there's a supply constraint. If you look at the distribution side, there's a demand constraint. If you generate and you don't generate enough, you lose. On idle capacity, you lose. So how do you work about this? And standing on the analogy Dr. Joy gave on the tripod arrangement, if one leg is not standing well, everybody is losing. And that's the honest truth. But against the backdrop of the circular economy, I think some of the things, the talking points and the key context that we should take out of this place, and what I will take out of, is the need to collaborate, one, Two, reducing waste. And I'm happy Donald spoke a lot about the efforts Abuja Disco is carrying out to reduce ATC and C losses. And of course, in terms of also trying to be collaborative, and now collaborative, every participant across the value chain, we've spoken about this chain so many times, having to collaborate in terms of policy formulation, implementation, having the right policies, making sure those policies are dynamic, making sure you have the ability to reiterate and go back on those policies. We do know, I mean, in the energy sector, there are two distinct acts now, or laws, the PIA standing on one leg, and of course the Power Sector Reforms Act standing on one leg, and we are struggling to see where those acts are conjoined at any point in time. And I think synergy, collaboration, efficiency becomes very, very important in trying to integrate our power systems. What Engineer Sulu said that I particularly like the most, and one of the things I would take out of this forum for me, is having to now structure energy demand based on the socio-economic needs of our people, where there are industries, where there are SME clusters, where you have very large manufacturing outlays. Imagine the entire Manufacturing Association of Nigeria not having to use their on-site generating capacity. Imagine throwing that out and having that come from a central source. And imagine the cost effect of that on the total cost of domestic goods. And imagine how competitive we would be. So I think many of the things that we have learned here, many of them are desired. How we get to that point, I think, is what we now need to work together on. One thing I learned very early in my career is the fact that if you are doing anything concerning gas, for instance, you have to work from the answer back to the question. And I think that also is very, very reflective of the energy sector. You have to be able to look at what is out there and then begin to scale and plan your systems and your laws and bring the right participants together. On the whole, I think the discussions today have reflected very well on the circular economy and the need for us now to begin to think about how we can expand what we have in terms of making Nigeria a very attractive environment in terms of energy and the energy needs of the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate your thoughts in this area. And I'm sure I really feel very strongly about how things will really work in this country. I mean, he raised a very particularly interesting point in terms of our PIA and the regulatory framework for the power sector not speaking to themselves. So each person is standing alone. And when policies and regulatory frameworks are standing on their own, inevitably you have a clash at the end of the day, and it slows down the progressive movement in that respect. But I do hope and trust that Nigeria will get to that point where things will be harmonized and all of us will be speaking the same language. On that note, I'd like to thank you all, but it's not my responsibility to do that. What I've just done is to lay a foundation for Mrs. Funmi Eyoyibo. Am I right? Okay, thank you.
I think we should give ourselves a round of applause for staying up till now. Thank you so much. My task is very, very simple. I was supposed to do closing remarks, but I think Barrister Fadikwe, that was his name? Yes, the CEO of Sage Consulting has actually helped us to wrap up very nicely, bringing together the challenges, the opportunities, and the possible solutions. The only thing I would like to add, and that is because I can see that one of our sponsors, one of our partners for this program is Aquiverse, Data, the Guiding Star. We've talked about the absence or the paucity of reliable and verifiable data. So maybe that's somewhere we need to start from, because data really needs to be the driving force behind all our solutions. I love the fact that Dr. Joy, you know, she was reading out the figures, the data from as far back as 10, 15 years, and these are the things that we really need to present so that everybody knows that we know what we are talking about. We cannot just do a plug and play. We must be able to domesticate even the solutions that we have heard about, in as much as they have worked in other places, will they work here? Looking at indigenous solutions, these are the key takeaways that I have from this program. Looking at policy disconnect, how can we get all stakeholders to work together in a coordinated manner so that everybody sees the role they are playing within this circular economy that we are all talking about, and that no one feels left behind. On that note, I would like to thank each and every one of us here present. We have left all our other businesses to be here, and we don't take that lightly at all. We appreciate your presence, we appreciate your contributions, we appreciate the fact that it was highly interactive, not just here, but online. I know there have been comments, there have been questions, there have been solutions being proffered, and that is very valuable for all of us. In particular, we would like to thank Her Excellency, the Ambassador Dr. Eniola Ajayi. Thank you very much. Dr. Innocent Honor of the African Development Bank, we appreciate your presence here with us today. Chris White, the Director of the African Circular Economy Network. Conrades, I schooled in the Netherlands, but I can't pronounce this. Managing Director of Trinomics. Thank you so much. That was an insightful presentation that you made. And do you know what? He was the only one that could identify with our wahala. Thank you. We appreciate the fact that you are almost a Nigerian now, or an African. Thank you very much. Engineer Mohammed, representing the chairman of NERC. Engineer Bolaji Sulu, Director, Energy Management, representing the DG of ACEN. Dr. Joy, it's always a delight listening to you, the Executive Secretary of the Association of Power Generation Companies of Nigeria. Mr. Donald Etim, the CMO AECDC, who stood in for the MD of AECD. We also had Dr. Ayodele Oni joining us online, and it was very brief, it was very short, it was very sharp. He is the partner, Bloomfield Law Practice. Thank you very much for your valuable contributions. And of course, Barrister Bode Fadipe. On this note, we would like to draw this meeting to an end. Thank you, and I wish you safe journeys back to your various destinations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. What else can we say? Other than to let you know, like I said initially, that there is a short cocktail. Please don't go away, otherwise we'll send our bills to you. So, but having said that, the legal practice does not allow a legal practitioner to start doing advertisement. Otherwise, I probably would have been telling you about legal practice and what we do. But for Sage Consulting, for which I have the honor to be the CEO, we also do policy advocacy and policy advisory concerning the power sector, because that's a place where we have gotten a lot of traction over a long period of time, spanning almost 4 decades. We also represent customers and project their interest as much as they want us to do it. So when next you have an issue in that regard, we are available to provide a service. I'd like to thank you for your attention. Like Mrs. Fumi said, Mrs. Fumi Eyoyibo, my name is Bode Fadipe. It's my pleasure to have been part of this program. Good afternoon.